Welcome back, everybody, to the Ketchup Podcast. Audio listeners, I just did my fucking ketchup shot. Where every week I catch up with my closest friends. I'm your host, Seth Aaron Shoemaker. Joining me this week, we had my man, Ed Mandala. I don't know if I pronounced that right. I literally just met him. Great guy, great episode. Kind of a long boy. Might be our longest podcast yet. He showed up with a bunch of fucking fun, interesting topics to listen to, or rather, well, yeah, for you to listen to. Give this podcast a fucking, definitely a listen. Definitely an interesting one, a little different than the ones we usually have. Me and Ed really didn't know each other prior to this, and we went all in on this podcast. It was great. It was a lot of fun. Talked about, shit from fucking going to school in a fallout shelter, and to like literally he's got a book he's working on. He's got we talked about like war, like the interesting politics of war. We talked about a lot of shit. I can't recall it all right now, but we talked about a lot of shit. Definitely give this podcast a listen. It was a lot of fun to make. Great guy. At the top of the show, plugs. What do we got? We have a website, blackmetalprod.com. That is blackmetalprod.com. Metal as in METAL, not as in, I don't know, some shitty fucking prize you get at like your middle school track meet. Not a metal, blackmetalprod.com. Go there, buy some fucking merch, check out the videos we got up there, check out the music we have over there, or the other podcast videos. We have merch there, Ketchup Podcast merch. There's Black Metal Productions merch. There's merch from some of my own solo music. Please go check it out. Hopefully buy some. It would help us a lot here to continue and to grow our podcast and whatever the fuck Black Metal Productions is. Whatever I'm making of that. Also on the site, there are, I think, music production services. There's a music production services tab. Go check that out if you need any help, producing a song or recording or mixing or mastering. We can maybe even help you with like audio production on your own podcasts if you wanted. Whatever you need, audio related. We've got me and my man, David Molina. Go check us out on that tab, the kind of the background we have if you need any help in that regard. That's all the plugs for the time being. Other than, fuck it, I'll say it at the top of the show. Ed's got a book out that you can read right now. It is in the description of this podcast on whatever you're watching this on. If you're into dark mythology type of shit, this is the book for you. Easy, digestible read. Definitely go check it out. On that note, let's roll into the rest of the fucking show. Enjoy. Hey, my man, how we doing?
Good. Am I coming through okay?
Mm-hmm. Sounding great.
Good deal.
Hell yeah. I'm going to call Bo. He's always fucking late. He's probably asleep right now.
Yeah, I work overnight, so I just stayed up and I'll sleep after this.
Oh, Jesus Christ. You're on That's impressive. Where do you work?
I work at a Goodyear in Topeka.
Oh, no shit. You might know, Todd Shoemaker?
Maybe.
There's probably so many departments at Goodyear that
there's like 1,500 people that work on the factory floor. So
yeah, I have no idea where he works exactly, but he works overnights some nights. But yeah, he works at Goodyear in Topeka as well. He's my
that's
uncle?
the rotating schedule. You basically cover every other shift's day off.
Fuck. Yeah, no. So that's where it is. What's up? Hi, how you doing? No, but that's like his schedule is brutal. Do you have a rotating or are you always night shift?
I was on a rotate, so it's like rotate is like you come in at 7, work till 3 on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday you work 3 to 11, and Thursday and Friday you work 11 to 7.
What the fuck?
But
Yeah,
I'm on third shift now, so I'm strictly 11 to 7.
that's probably nicer though, right?
Right. It's nice because it's Saturday night through Wednesday night. So I get Thursday and Friday nights off.
That is pretty nice. And then and at least it's static instead of constantly
Right.
changing work schedule. Because
Because
yeah,
I don't like, wondering where I'm going to be on a schedule wise. It's fixed. So it's nice to just start and end at the same time, every day.
yeah, my uncle's been there for years, and then he'll like get off work. It's crazy to see him work because he lives on a farm, like with it's him, my dad, my brother, and it used to be my grandpa too. We all lived in like this mile radius, and we all like shared work on a farm. And he would get off work, and sometimes get home in the morning because he just did the night shift, and come back and work all day on the farm, and then go back and do like an afternoon shift or something. And then like I think currently his schedule is he'll do some crazy shit like that and then crash for like a day and a half.
Right.
It's insane that he has that in him, and he's like surely in his late 50s by now. And like I'm thinking about that, and I don't think I have the fucking energy to do that, but he's out here doing it all the fucking time.
Right. It takes getting used to.
Mm-hmm.
And so it pays really well
I was
because
gonna say, yeah.
we're unionized. And so the most I can make without a degree, if I get the right job, I can make $30 an hour without a degree.
That's pretty fucking good.
Right. And then I could go, if I wanted to, the union can help reimburse for tech classes. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at in a couple of years going to electrician school.
So yeah, that's I was gonna ask about that. So is what is your official position there? What do you do at Goodyear?
I think it's batch off operator.
Okay.
It's at the very beginning. It's just milling rubber and then laying it down so they can take it and build the tires.
Oh shit. Oh, okay, I see.
Right. So
And
we're at like almost the very beginning.
oh, at the beginning of like the manufacturing process.
Right. So they drop it into a mill, which is like you imagine the front of two steamrollers together,
Oh shit.
and
Okay.
it squishes this big chunk of rubber down to like 8/32 of an inch, and then we run it in strips, and then we send it off, and then people on fork trucks or forklifts, whatever you call them, will take them to the component prep place, and then I don't know what happens after that.
Right. That kind of sounds like not to shit on your fucking place of employment, as shit as like sometimes people make factory, I don't even know if Goodwill is technically a factory, but like factory work, as shit as some people make it sound, that sounds like kind of a fun process. Like I would almost want to sit in and like watch that happen.
Yeah, it's
I,
fun. I mean, it's hot, you know,
uh
because the rubber sometimes runs up to like 250 degrees.
hmm
But I mean, other than the heat, it's easy. They've got all the safety stuff in place, so it's nowhere near as dangerous as people think it is.
hmm hmm is it just like a big like shop house, or is it like a proper building? Because I think I've heard my uncle bitch about it being like hot in there, like no AC in certain places of the building, and
Right. Well, it's so big, and the building is 75 years old, so
that's
so it
fun.
is. It's basically one open space, and then they have rooms inside, like break rooms and business centers and stuff.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. Like on the corners and side of the building, but it's mostly
Right.
like an open floor plan type of
Right.
thing.
And but all the space is taken up by people and machines, and
Yeah.
but they'll have like their business centers will just be like imagine like like a shack built like inside because it's got four
Wow.
walls and a roof and it's inside the place.
That takes me back. I haven't been into a place like that in like forever. My dad used to work on like for like a rail car company for 36, 37 years, and I've only been to his place of work like a few times, but it was a very similar thing, like a huge open shop with like a I don't know, a secretary business like office off to one section, and just fucking train cars all over the place. He was like a repairman on train
Right.
cars.
we've
And
got our own place because they'll bring in some of the materials we need on train. So we've got our own tiny rail yard where
oh shit,
they'll drop off the big train cars.
that's kind of cool. That I had no idea Goodwill like worked with like trains. It's I just assumed it was all just like car tires. What all does Goodwill do? Who do they manufacture for and distribute to? Do you know?
So Goodyear just they kind
Or
of
did I say
manufacture.
Goodwill? Goodyear.
Yeah, yeah. So Goodyear manufactures. I mean, they send tires out to people all over the place,
Okay.
and there's not just plants in America. You know, they've got plants all over the world that will make tires.
Uh huh.
Um, but we don't make car tires. We make tires for they're called over the road tires. So they're like tires for semis and school buses. Medium radial truck tires is their official name, I think. So
Like,
for
go ahead.
so like school buses, big semi trucks, stuff like that. And then we make earth mover tires for like skid loaders, equipment like that. And then
Mm-hmm.
you see those pictures of those like ridiculously large dump trucks that they have.
Yeah.
We make tires for those too, and they're huge.
I guess I never realized that, but that makes sense, especially like being in the middle of the country because there's a lot of kind of like I don't know, I mean, hop on I-70 at any point in time, you're gonna see like 1,000 semis hauling
Right.
cross state lines and it's definitely like an ag town. You got to get like stuff for skid steers and whatnot. That's I had no idea. I really thought it was just car tires in Topeka, but they literally don't do it at all.
Yeah. So we don't do car tires. Um, there are other places. I think Danville makes car tires, maybe in Virginia.
Okay.
And then you have places like I think Danville makes airplane tires too. And I think
Whoa.
places like Akron will make the like the race, like the NASCAR tires and stuff like that.
I've heard of Akron. I don't know why I know that name, but I've heard of it.
Akron, Ohio, that's the big corporate center.
Oh, oh, okay.
That's the epicenter. That's where all the bigwig people are at.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Well, I think Bo's dad works in a similar field. He might do like solo independent shit, but let me call this motherfucker up and see what he's doing because
Right.
I'm sure he's got some input on this. Show, I guess, show the potentially the audience. Let's face him with fear if he actually picks up. He's dead ass asleep. I know it for a fact. He's gonna text me in about 20 minutes and be like, "Oh shit, sorry man, just woke up." Yep. Oh well. But yeah, no. His. Do you know Bo by chance at all?
Um, I don't think so.
No. Did you go to Sabetha? What school did you go to
I
there?
I went to Jackson Heights,
Jackson Heights. Okay.
but I lived in between Holton and Mayetta out in the country.
What was your grad year?
2019.
2019. Oh, okay. So you might not know her then. Do you know Lucy Shoemaker?
Yes,
Okay, that's my
but
sister. Go
okay,
ahead.
she would have been
Like 2016, class of 2016 or some
right. So
shit.
I would have been a
15.
freshman.
Right, right. Yeah. Fuck, that was a long time ago. I very briefly thought about going to. So I was also class of 2019. I think Bo was 2018 or 2017. Um, I graduated early, but I entertained the thought of going to Jackson Heights just for what's her name, Miss Holiday, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
Mary,
be-
not Mary. Her first name has escaped me, but Laura, I
Laura,
believe Laura Holiday.
Laura Holiday. I thought about going there just for that because, I mean, uh, Wetmore was nice to me because in like pep band, my teacher would let me like take like a fucking flute part or something like that and play it on
Right.
guitar for basketball games, do like death metal I don't know, Proud Mary or Smoke on the Water with like an orchestra around me, which was cool. But I felt like I wasn't learning much or performing very well with like that band. Like it's not a band that takes itself seriously. And didn't Jackson Heights win state band like every fucking year for a while?
So I'll be honest, I have no idea.
Uh-huh.
I associated with band for 1 year, which was fifth grade. I played the trumpet. I played it poorly, and then I didn't sign up again after that.
Trumpet's fucking tough. I tried that for I don't know, maybe a month or two. Um, I played trombone. This is how much it doesn't translate. I played trombone, which is like a similar mouthpiece. It's just bigger. I played that fifth grade through senior year intermittently. But trying to translate that to trumpet, in fucking insane. That's such a tiny little mouthpiece to try to like control and get good like sound out of.
Right.
It's fucked. There's no way I could do that.
Yeah. So Miss Holiday, a few years ago, I think well before I graduated, had moved on. So she's not teaching there anymore.
Yes, yes, my sister mentioned that. It wasn't much before you graduated though, right? It
It
was
would have been maybe 3 years at the most.
whoa, 3 whole fucking years. Okay, so
That,
then
but I mean, I don't remember a whole lot from my earlier years of high school, so I may be wrong.
uh-huh.
But I know we went through at least it was at least 2 years because we had somebody he showed up for a year, and then I believe there's a current band teacher, and she's been around for a while.
Okay, I think I've heard I couldn't tell you the name for the life of me, but I think I've heard of her. I didn't realize there was a different guy in the middle of that. But cool, cool. So, what was Jackson Heights elective system like? Because for Wetmore, for us, like if you didn't do band, you did like Spanish or something because that was the only other class that was available, or some bullshit. But like, what would you fill that hour with instead of band?
Right. So I remember in elementary they had non-band, which was just an hour where you would just make whatever and have
Hmm.
fun. And from what I remember, when you got out of like middle school into high school, it would just turn into sort of a free hour.
Damn,
And but not really, not in the sense of like just to mess around,
like
but
a
in the
study
sense,
hall.
right? You could have study halls, or you could choose another class. So I up until um actually I think all 4 years, I had that was filled with weightlifting.
Oh shit.
And so that freed me up for other stuff like graphic design or some like a business class, stuff like that. So
Do you?
it was just another elective that you could choose.
Uh huh. Yeah, we didn't have shit for electives. Now you had a weightlifting class. Is that separate from like a physical education course?
Right. So we would have a PE,
Uh huh.
which was, do what, it's either you play whatever PE game stuff.
Sure.
And then some days we might lift, but there was a class dedicated to going downstairs into the weight room and lifting.
I've fuck. I haven't explored that like that school enough. I've only been in there a few times, but there's like a lower level. I always thought it was just like one level.
Right. So there's the main floor, and then you go downstairs and they've got the weight room and the health class down there.
And all the nuclear waste.
Right.
Right.
All the old missiles that just kind of piled up. So
Right.
there's a door next to the stairs that lead down to the weight room at the bottom of the stairs,
Mm-hmm.
and it just says not an exit. And you open it up, and there's this big tunnel with an American flag kind of painted around it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you walk down there, and I think it's like 40 feet below sea level, somewhere
Jesus.
around there, because it used to be an old missile silo.
Uh-huh.
So you go like they had the science room down there a time ago before water damage got to it, and they
Mhm.
had the old weight room down there. But when people would from other schools would come over, we'd take them down there and show them like the old control room, or you know,
Whoa.
or just the tunnel itself is cool on its own.
Yeah.
But we take them and show this was the old control room and this and whatever, all kind of the stuff that was not really left behind per se, but stuff they couldn't take with them.
I see. So I mean, I've always heard about that, and like, it's always been like jokes about like, don't go to Jackson Heights, you'll fucking die from nuclear fallout or whatever, nuclear old waste. But what's the actual history of that? Like, why was it there, and when was it there? Like, what decade or when was that active?
So I'm not sure when it was active. Probably in for sure in the 60s, in the
Okay.
early to mid 60s, probably the 50s, right, where the Cold War starts to spike.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just build, there's multiple old missile silos in Kansas. There's one in Topeka that somebody's turned into a property that they live at
Okay.
that they're trying to sell for like $2.5 million, I think.
Damn.
And so they've got them up, and you can, there's people in Kansas a lot towards the Great Plains area and some of the Midwest where these old decommissioned missile silos are. And so
I see.
the base, the missile silo and base that was at Jackson Heights was, I'm not sure if it was active up until, but it was sold in 1969 for, I believe, $1 was the selling price.
Holy
Was
shit.
But you also have like the taxes on it and then a bunch of upkeep, so there's a lot of hidden costs.
Yeah.
But that's the big thing they'll tell us, like, oh, it was bought for $1. And I think the first class was the class of 1969 is the first class, and then it goes from 1969, and then we had our 50-year anniversary when I graduated, and now it's been a couple years after that.
Whoa. So okay. So that's kind of a, well, I guess I should have known that, but yeah, that's relatively a new school, especially for
Right.
that area where I think ours was definitely in the 1800s at some point. I couldn't tell you if it was early or late, but it's got like the year posted up on like the top of the
Right.
school or some bullshit.
Well, it
But
was good because you had all these smaller, you had places like Circleville, Soldier, Whiting, Netawaka, right? All these
mhm.
smaller towns that were just far enough away from Holton where it would be an inconvenience. And the old schools that, like, Soldier has an old school. I don't know if Circleville had one. I know they had a gym
I wouldn't be
that's there,
surprised if Circleville had a tiny little schoolhouse at one
right?
point.
But this was for everybody in North Jackson County. This was their place to, one place to converge that wasn't as far as Holton for some places.
Hmm.
And it was a little bit smaller. I think I graduated with 30 people, 32 people at the most.
Yeah. Yeah. We had probably like 16 or something
Right.
in our graduating class.
That's weird talking to people who are like, yeah, I graduated with 600 people, you
Oh,
know.
hey, Soch, how many people were in your graduating class? How many? Oh, just 400? Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say something in the thousands. There's some schools, aren't there, like, are there Topeka schools that get up in the thousands with the graduating classes?
I'm not sure, but like that's just something that's insane to me.
Yes. Yeah, for
Going
sure.
and like not knowing all of your classmates, because I knew all my everybody in my class, and then I knew everybody in the classes above and below down to freshman year. That was but that the entire population of the school that attended doesn't make up, you know, doesn't come close to one graduating class.
Yeah, yeah. No, I like to bring that up a lot. She just said 400. Wetmore was like kindergarten through senior year. They actually just added like a pre-K like a year before I graduated. So preschool through senior year, like 250 max. So all the grades put together, not even close to like 1 year's graduating class. It's and we just like took it for granted then. But now I'm out in like I'm living in LA, and anytime I bring that up to anyone, their fucking head blows off. It's like,
Right? They're
holy
like,
shit,
oh, it's
what?
a Oh, his old country boy came from out in the country to come live in California.
Yeah, they're always like, that must have been a big change for you. I was like, I mean, yeah, I
Right.
guess.
Well, even, I went to Washburn first semester
Hmm.
before I gave up on my dreams and decided to mess with rubber. And even then, the classes were small. I never had a class above 30 people
Was
at
that
any point.
Washburn Tech or Washburn University?
It was the actual university.
Okay, yeah.
So the classes were all below 40,
Hmm.
which was nice because I didn't have to transition from, you know, if you imagine going from somewhere like Jackson Heights, where your classes are 20 people max on a good day, to somewhere, out of state where you've got like 300 people in a class.
And like that, yeah, my anxiety about college was I would get there and it would be that whole huge like fishbowl auditorium with the rows of seats and every
Right.
seat
And
would
they've
be
got
filled.
that's the room that they showed us when we went to visit, was this big, almost like an indoor amphitheater.
Was it like like a in like a political science room
I
or
think it
something like
was
that?
I think it was the history, where the history
History,
professor was.
that sounds
That's who
right.
was teaching. Was There was a history professor there. I'm
I
not
see.
sure if that was a dedicated classroom, but
Sure. Well, I doubt any of them are. But like some of the buildings have different like I guess degrees. Like over here, you're gonna find a lot of arts and stuff, and over here, you're gonna find a lot of business and politics.
right.
I went to Washburn for 7 months to get my general education units all wrapped up. And yeah, it's weird because it's a huge fucking campus, but exactly like what you said, you get there and maybe 30 tops.
Right. And I never got to experience the big auditorium like classrooms.
Hmm.
All my stuff, like I had two criminal justice classes,
Hmm.
and then had an English class, and then they had it's like the Washburn, the Woo 101, I think they called it,
Oh,
which was a required class.
I somehow got lucky and I didn't have to take that, and I don't know how I got away with that. But
Right. And
like I know everyone else had to, but go ahead.
I had five classes lined up. I had my CJ classes, I had my English class, and I had the required one. But then I had an American history class that was American history through the Civil War.
Oh.
And that that meant, what I understood it as was American history throughout the Civil War.
Oh, not through. Oh, not
Right.
from like coming here to the Civil War. You thought it was just Civil War
Right. And so I was really
history.
interested, and I showed up. And so the professor comes down and he draws this shitty map of the United States. And he says, 50,000 years ago, when the first natives crossed the land bridge. I'm like, oh, I'm in the wrong fucking class.
Let me get out of here. Fuck.
Yeah, I think I was in it for like a week and a half. I tried to stick through it, but it was in a basement, and it was some of the most boring stuff I've ever heard.
Oh yeah, in that like middle center where like the registrar and shit is, when you go down to those bottom levels for classrooms, it's like depressing down there.
Right. And it's like a Faraday cage too. I can't even dick around on my phone over there.
that's
I
a
gotta
that's a good reference that I think me and maybe three other people will know. That
right.
I just learned about Faraday cages like a week and a half ago. Those are so interesting to me. But yeah, fuck that. Not being able to like dick around in class in a boring ass class.
Well, I'm sure the subject matter was interesting for some people. It's just I'm very big on war history,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so some of the stuff that doesn't get covered as much, like the Spanish American War, um, and things like that. And even you get into stuff kind of more recent, like the Korean War
Mm-hmm.
and aspects of World War One. I know a lot of history stuff gets hyper focused on the Second World War,
Oh
which I
yeah,
took my time and
absolutely.
I learned plenty about. But there's all this other information to learn, and for
Yeah,
me, the
I
Civil
don't.
War was particularly interesting because you've got, in term of the times, you've got this incredibly modern technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're on like the very cusp of the conical bullet. We're just about there. We are there actually, with some of the balls were conical in shape, but then you've got these really old, uh, formations and ways of fighting where you stand in a line and you
Hmm.
shoot at them, and then you shoot back, and and so it's weird to think about, and it's surprisingly a brutal war when you combine those two. It's the same way that the First World War was, where you had trenches and the same
Fuck.
run at these guys, except these guys have they can fire more than one round every 2 minutes, and then
Yeah.
machine guns are introduced. It's that same sort of aspect that's interesting, is the old tactics, and then with the extreme modern technology for the time, where you're forced to adapt on the run. And it's interesting to try and to see and understand that change as the wars progress.
Yeah, because there's definitely different, like there's no way you would apply like Civil War, like war or a combat methodology to like fighting in Afghanistan or something like that in like 2001 or whatever. Like
Right. And
no way that that could fly. So yeah, that isn't something I think about often, but that is fucking interesting how much they had to adapt through each little conflict, or well, not
right.
little, but
And so, and even looking at stuff like the War on Terror, which
mhm.
should technically be officially over by September 11th, I think was the end date for the last troop is supposed to leave. So
Oh no shit.
that will mark 20 years. Um, and so seeing how far it's come to it turned from, they're leaning more on the side of an information war now. And it's all about information more so than it was, and then the actual, you know, physical application is applied later rather than before, other than you have extreme cases, obviously, but a lot of the stuff is you gather information first and then you build whatever case and then you move, so it's an entirely different way than it was, 70 to 100 years ago.
Well, fuck. I mean, even the way you're talking about it now, it sounds like an entirely different like way than it was like 15 years ago.
Right.
That's
I,
really interesting.
yeah, and you can see that change from Desert Shield and Desert Storm in the 90s, where
Uh-huh.
it was just we get into a big line on the border, and then that was Desert Shield, and then we move across.
Hmm.
And so that, I think, after when the War on Terror started and it became more of a war of information, um, it shifted very drastically and very, very fast. And so I think we're just now catching up with that, because it's been a very long time since the United States has involved itself in what you would call a conventional war, you know, one country versus the other country, which I
Hmm.
think would be in the 90s. I might be entirely incorrect, but, the war on terror was you take, you're attacking groups,
Yeah, that makes sense.
and you also have to, on top of attacking groups, it turns into the information where you have to fight the idea as well as the people, because the idea is what makes the people strong. So you have to attack the idea and then deal with the people.
Holy shit.
Because you might go into Syria and you might execute every single ISIS fighter in Syria. That doesn't kill the
The
idea,
ideology is still there. Yeah,
right?
you gotta. Oh my god.
So there's this huge unseen spider web of shit that has to happen. And so you
Yeah,
might be able to go in and kill everybody, but their kids and their kids, those ideas are going to live on, and it's just going to
I was gonna say
it's
you can't just go in and start killing the Syrian civilians because of the way they think. But
right. And even if you do that, then you're just going to create a different idea.
yeah, then you're creating your own like I don't know, maybe political, but like this ideology of like if you were to do that, then like the U.S. is a country who believes in the idea of killing people who don't have the same thought process as
Right.
them.
And so that's where it comes in, where those are seeds that are sown a long time ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe my father was killed when I was 3 years old by
Mm-hmm.
a drone strike or whatever. Now
Mm-hmm.
I am 16 or 17 and I'm ready now and I can fight. And so that's where a lot of that information comes because if you're not forward thinking, then all of a sudden 15 to 20 years later, oh shit, there's a bunch of people that we fought 20 years ago and they're back again and they're angry and it's all these guys' children that we killed.
Uh-huh. Do you think the pullout in by September would fix a lot of that? Because then we wouldn't be there to like continue to stay like overlooking so harshly on what's going on there,
Right. Um,
and we wouldn't be creating as many issues for their lives as much as we don't want them to, like have control of like a fucked up idea or concept or a bad regime. I don't know a lot about what's going on now, but do you think the pullout would help matters?
so a lot of, past, if you look past the active combat operations, a lot of the stuff is a lot of policing,
Yeah, that makes sense.
a lot of trying to build community, you know, and this happens in America, community-based policing, where you go and you get involved with the community.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of that. The, it depends, the outcome depends on the attitude towards the situation. So if you think, we're pulling our troops out and they were in talks with I believe it was the Taliban, that was who they were negotiating with,
Mm-hmm.
and then they start back the reason the same reason that we were there in the first place. If that starts again, you could say, well, this, we'll leave, but we'll be back if this happens, you know
Sure.
and so that it doesn't technically eliminate the idea, or they might take the stance of, all right, fuck you, we're gone forever, deal with it yourself, right? And then we just don't care what happens.
Yeah, so in which case we definitely have to go with the former. I think I'm using that term correctly, but it would make more sense to be like what you said initially of like, hey, don't fuck this up.
Right. But it's also, it's almost uh, hypocritical in a sense of going in to a broken country, trying to help, and then breaking it more, and then leaving and saying, don't break it more than we broke it.
Yeah, no shit. So we got to invest. We almost have to invest in them which I'm sure we already are in some
Right.
aspect, but to rebuild a bit of what we destroyed.
Well, that's what I believe what the plan for the last maybe 5 or 10 years has been, to put an infrastructure back that was removed from war. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, places like Afghanistan have been contested since the 1980s when the Soviets and the Afghans fought each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of trying to replace a lot of, 30 or 40 years of infrastructure that was destroyed, in the span of 10 years. And then you also have to deal with groups of militant fighters, and so I think it may boil down to, we did our best. This is, we tried to fix it. This is what it is. Sorry.
Yeah, because we can't be like a catch-all as much as we try to be like a, what do they call us? I remember this term from like high school, like a
Big Brother
super.
might be a,
Big Brother is one. I'm thinking like superpower country or something like that.
oh, like
Or
a global superpower. Yeah.
yeah, as much as we want to look at ourselves as that, and probably a lot of other countries do too, we can't just like be 100% fixing it, like everything for everyone. As much as, sometimes it might be in our either best interest, or we can be fucking like responsible for it, like outright. But sometimes we just don't have those resources, and
Right.
we can't do that for everyone. And so yeah, exactly like what you said, it might have to boil down to, hey, we tried our fucking best, we're gonna get out, don't fuck up.
Right.
um
The issue I take with that statement is there is a big decision you have to make, even if it's global and people
Mhm.
may not consider it any of the United States business, you have to decide to do what is popular with the people or what is right. Because if we
Yes.
decide to do what's popular instead of what it's right, then we're no better than the UN, who has now just turned to, we'll put a sanction on you. Sorry, too bad you murdered 40,000 people. Here's a sanction, you know. Or if you have the means, like the United States has, um, one of the largest militaries in the world and one of the most advanced, if you have those means to do right by a people that's oppressed and being killed or, you know, or a genocide, to go in and say, stop, right?
Right.
Being the strong fist instead of like an open palm. So there was issue with that in the Second World War, while the United States was really isolationist, and Adolf Hitler came in and was annexing countries, and the plan was, the policy of appeasement was the
Mhm.
active plan, was says, okay, we'll let him take Czechoslovakia, we'll let him take Austria, we just give him what he wants, these few things, right? And then he'll be fine. Well, then he wasn't fine and he wasn't satisfied. And they told him to stop. And he said no. And then the largest conflict that the world has ever seen broke out.
Yeah, no shit.
So, there is a lot to learn, even though it was so long ago. There's a lot to learn politically about, and now that the U.S. is, in a military sense, probably stronger than it's ever been,
Mhm.
and more advanced than it's ever been, definitely. If you have the means, and this might sound kind of weird or overconfident, but as far as I can tell, I don't think there is any country that could win a conventional war against the United States. Now, of course,
Yeah.
there's massive sacrifice you have to make that may not be, that's not may not be, it's definitely not worth it, lives of people. But if they really wanted to, a conventional war could happen with any other global superpower. And even if it was, the longest, bloodiest conflict, I cannot see a future where the U.S. does not come out on top just because of their advancements and the training they receive.
You don't oh, I had a question about this and I immediately lost it. You don't think oh, I fucking lost it. So I'll ask something I wanted to ask earlier. Do you think a lot of the budget, this is backing up a little bit, the military budget, people always bitch about the budget, and to an extent I understand. Uh do you think a lot of that budget is going to the like rebuilding infrastructure in like foreign countries that we fucked up? Do you think
Um, a, a bit. I'm sure there's a percentage that will go to supporting countries, because it's like, I think 2% or just less than 2% of the yearly budget the United States has does go out for foreign aid, uh, in a monetary sense. But what people don't realize when they think about the military budget, they think of just the country. But what people don't understand, or I don't want to, that sounds condescending, but what might not
sure.
be realized, maybe I should say, is that, there are bases that the United States owns and operates all over the world,
Mhm. Mhm.
like,
And,
Japan,
mhm.
still, I believe, somewhere in, like, not Southeast Asia, but the South Pacific, Greece, places in Europe, and all these other things they have to upkeep, which does total up and it adds up. And so when people see this big number for the military budget, what everything behind that isn't just buy new guns, and military equipment is expensive. Jets are expensive, tanks are expensive, but those are things you have to furnish across the entire world, wherever
Yeah.
wherever there's an operating base that has to be furnished, not just in the United States.
And I think a lot of the people who would argue against where our current military budget would say, well, why the fuck are they all over the place? Why don't we just come back home? We're not in a war.
Right. Well, there's
needs
that
anymore.
that firm hand again that we talked about.
Yeah.
There is, well, I could invade this small country, but the United States is right there and it can see everything and they can be here within a matter of 12 hours, right, to respond.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I have no hard stance on this. I just know both sides of the table. It makes sense to, especially in countries who are, fucking with our allies or who have a past of fucking with our allies, to be like, all right, we're gonna hang out for a little bit, make sure you're doing okay. But I also understand when people look at the military budget and they see themselves and all their, like, all the flaws in our own country. Not that there's a fuck ton. There are. I mean, surely there's. I mean, there's flaws in every country, but some people see more than others, and some people want more change here than others. Um, I guess I understand why they would think, hey, get those motherfuckers out here, give us a little, put a little more money back into the community
Right.
that is the United States of America, and let's start rebuilding our own infrastructure. Some of which have, like, industrial plants up in, like, the, what is that, the Northeast.
Right. And I think a lot of money should be invested into vocational stuff. So in about, I believe it's 25 years, there will be a 6.5 million shortage of skilled laborers
Oh, Jesus
in the
Christ.
United States alone. So you've got stuff like that because all these old folks are retiring, and then a lot of the stuff that was pushed was go to college, go to college, go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got that few out of every class, two to six, who went to who went to like the Votech stuff and learned, and then everybody else either went to college or tried to go to college, and they just don't see it as an option because it was never introduced.
Mm-hmm. As vote, yeah. I have. Fuck, you're right though. Those numbers don't really add up to much of anything. I have some family and I have some friends that graduated Wetmore that went through, like, the Highland Votech programs that they did throughout high school, but it wasn't like a lot of people. Again, it was like 6 people throughout
Right.
junior and senior year of high school. Like, they
And
would
even
take a little
those
minivan to Highland.
even those numbers might be high considering that the places that I went to school and the places that I would call familiar are these middle of nowhere podunk places that grew up on tradition of working with your hands and building things, something that is familiar to them already. But if you talk about places like perhaps like Los Angeles or New
New
York,
York, yeah.
New York's big with construction, so that's good. New York's got a
Well,
very big construction infrastructure.
yeah. But
But
you
you
come to LA, everyone wants to be a fucking, like a pop star or an actor. No one's gonna go into, like, diesel mechanics or anything out
right.
here.
And so you look at these very I don't want to try to put political labels on it, but things that are more left leaning,
Sure.
not to try to put a negative connotation on that, but places that are more left leaning, focusing more on liberal arts
Mm-hmm.
and humanities, along the coasts and in some states, and so if you, because the Great Plains area and the Midwest, excluding the cities in the Midwest like Chicago and some of Detroit, you know, it's a very small kind of population compared to how concentrated it is on the coasts.
It definitely is.
And so the more focus you have on liberal arts and humanities, the less people will look towards um, vocational things. And that's not a fault towards them. That's something that was never introduced to them, that may never have been an option, or if it was, they never talked about it. It's like the fine print on a pamphlet.
Do you think we need to incentivize vocational technical work more, like unionize? I don't know if this would work, but for example, like, unionize more of the industry. Would that incentivize people from, maybe not necessarily the coasts because it's just like a different lifestyle, but maybe more people from the middle of the country and, like,
Right.
industrial places to want to work at places like that?
Yeah, so unionizing is very hit and miss
Mm-hmm.
because I got lucky and our area got lucky that we have a fantastic union, but it's not always going to be like that. People are very opinionated about unions
Hmm.
most of the time. A good percentage of people, when you talk about a union to anybody over the age of 35, will either absolutely love the union or they will hate it,
Yeah.
because the union we have is a good union. It works hard to make sure that people that work there have their rights. But then there are some unions that don't give a shit, you know.
So then this more comes into you just gotta look at the industry and the companies themselves and make sure they have a better workflow to like maybe not even necessarily in the union's standards, but if they don't have a union, just a company that gives a shit about its workers more.
Right,
So we gotta, and I don't know how you overlook or you don't really want to regulate that. Like you don't want government stepping into private industry a lot of the time. I feel like, and I feel like a lot of people don't want government stepping into that kind of thing. But I don't, I wouldn't know how else to. I'm sure there is a way, but how else to like make sure big companies treat their workers
right.
better
So I
than they
think
currently do.
it's good that Kansas is not a closed shop state, with meaning that you have places like Ohio where if there's, I think it's Ohio or maybe somewhere in that general area, there are states where if you are not in the union, you cannot work there. So,
Oh,
so in the Topeka factory specifically, I'm not speaking for any other state, um, where a plant is, you are given the choice to join the union or not. So there are people that work at the plant that are not affiliated with the union. It is
whoa.
good. It is good to have that choice.
Okay, that I can see why. But you're saying other states don't have that choice. Like if you
Right.
work at a Goodyear in, say, Ohio, I don't just we
Right.
said it earlier. I don't know if this is true or not, but in Ohio, if you work at Goodyear, you are obligated to be part of the union.
Right. Or required might be better.
Required, sure,
If you
sure.
don't join the union, you don't work there. I think that is a bad way of practice.
I would agree. A lot of people, well, like you said, people have fucking opinions.
Right. Who's gonna? Because it's good. It is good to have outside criticism. Who is going to criticize the union if everybody is in the union? Right.
So yeah, yeah. So, but what are union benefits? Because if you work at the same company and but you're not part of the union, what's the difference for you while you're working there?
So the plant will have things called union stewards,
Okay.
which are people that work in different parts. They just work their regular jobs, but they have this extra bit that they do. So like whenever a plant worker will talk to a manager about something that's not, if it's about like scheduling or maybe perhaps they get in trouble, a union steward will always be there to make sure that the rights are protected.
Oh shit.
And so there are also, that are negotiated in the contract, you know, so there is protection through the union where so the company may try to fire a worker who's in the union, and the union can come back with, well, in the contract, they will go through the contract and they will keep people their jobs.
Hmm.
If you think of a place like where Walmart could fire somebody for whatever without reason, right?
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
are things negotiated into union contracts, most union contracts, where a reason has to be provided and it has to be a reasonable thing
Hmm.
that they were let go for. And
Yeah.
so,
That. Go ahead.
somebody who's not in the union, um, just is not doesn't get those benefits. And people will gripe about, well, the union made sure we got good insurance and they get to take it. I think anybody working an industry job should get good insurance. That's just a
Yeah.
personal thing. I think good insurance should not be a question,
I mean, especially for a big company
right?
like Goodyear.
People are very strange about that. about people that aren't the union, but I've always kept the belief that I could not give a shit whether somebody is in the union as long as they do their job.
Uh-huh.
If you're not in the union, all that means is that you don't get a safety net that the union provides.
But you'll still get like through Goodyear like severance and a 401k if you want it,
Right,
and all that kind of shit.
right. And so people are very, very sticky about that because that's stuff that the union fought for the union workers, but it's applied generally.
To the whole oh.
So,
So are people pissed off when you're not a union worker because you're like mooching off the benefits
right,
of
that's their thing. But, I think those benefits should be awarded to anybody working
I
in an
agree.
industrial job just because of the nature of the work at some points. But, you know, I feel like if you're not in the union, as long as you do your job, I don't care. But if you get in trouble, you know, I may not feel as bad if you get let go because you were, those things were offered to you, you know, and you said, no, thanks. I don't want to be part of the union. So when that time comes, you know, you may not get the protection that everybody else gets. You won't have a union steward with you
Mhm.
that makes sure that they are, they're following the contract, whatever managers follows that contract and is doing what they're supposed to do, and you're not being screwed out of your job. You just won't get that benefit.
Right, right. There's yeah, I definitely understand that. I've been in those situations before where it's like, well, I mean, you kind of fucked yourself there, buddy.
Right.
Like it was offered to you. Oh well, sorry.
And
It,
I still feel bad for people losing their jobs because
mhm.
anybody losing a job, especially people, the average age for Goodyear employees, from what I can understand from my own observation, is probably about 35, and like 29 to 40 is the average. And then you've got people that, are much older that have been working there since time began. Um, and so it's just stuff like that.
Yeah, it's tough when I've unfortunately had some experiences with like my family being pushed out of those. I don't know why they like to keep that number, that average number low, but uh, I've had family members that get up there in age, and those industries want to push them out as soon as they have like fuck, what's it called, when they like a shortage of work and they need layoffs. Even if you've been there and you've been a dedicated worker for years and years and years and you've been doing good shit for the company, um, if it's time to get into layoffs and if those layoffs don't allow you to come back to the company in the future and it turns into full firing, they like to kind of purge those older guys. They like to
Right.
keep the young healthy ones, which on paper makes sense. It's just unfortunate to those
Right.
older
And see,
dedicated workers.
so from my understanding is the union that we have is in place that keeps them from doing that.
Right. So you
So I
guys are
believe I
lucky with
believe they do
the young
layoffs by
union.
seniority, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe if you have a certain amount of years of seniority, you may be safe from being laid off.
Oh,
But
that's nice.
from what I understand, for anybody, you do have the option to come back. I've talked to people that have been laid off 5 or 6 times throughout their entire career, and they've just come back and reapplied, and they get their old job back when they can go back up to capacity.
So I've I guess been kind of confused about exactly what a layoff is, because the way it's been portrayed to me is that it's not like you're not being fully fired. It's like when work comes back, you can come back, but you have to reapply still even after you've been laid off.
It just I think it just depends on the company.
Sure, sure.
Um, and I may have misheard, but I think you might be more correct in like, so you're laid off for now, so you go and you can apply for unemployment for however long,
Mm-hmm.
and then in 6 months you come back and say, is there work available? Can I come back to my job? And they can either say yes or no, you have to wait, stuff like that. Or they may have
Yeah,
other positions open for you. But seniority is a big thing over there.
that's good. And again, because of the union, I don't think my parents or well, it was my dad who was in this issue. I don't think he worked at a job where there even was a union. But I mean, I guess if there was, he wasn't a part of it, unfortunately.
Right. And
And
that's somebody
twice
that's
that's happened to him.
right. That's just somebody's decision. Like, I'm not, if people have their own reservations about the union, that's none of my business. You know,
Hmm.
I'm not gonna judge somebody for being reserved. If they had a bad experience with a union, you have every right to be cautious when
Hmm.
joining another one.
Yeah. Well, and again, I don't know that there was one for him. He kind of worked at like small name companies. Like if I'd say that one was just started by like two brothers like 20 years ago. I guess I shouldn't say the name of the service if he was if we're kind of talking about unfortunate matters, but
Right.
yeah, I did, how common is union? Like would you get a union, would there be union benefits at like a small independent like maintenance place and stuff
Um,
like that?
Usually if it's small, the answer is going to be no.
Right.
And so a lot of the time, companies become unionized not by choice of their own. If you look at some of the stuff that's going on with Amazon
Hmm.
and people trying to unionize Amazon plants right now or warehouses where they go on strike and they say, we're not going to work until, you know, we can choose a union to protect our rights as workers. And the issue that with stuff like Amazon, when people go on strike, they have people lined up waiting for to work at Amazon. Work, that's jobs is the same as Walmart. Takes
Yeah.
very little training. You know, it doesn't take much training. You can train for 2 days and you can be ready to stand and work. And they've got people lining up waiting to make money that will walk past all those people that just went on strike and plug those gaps.
Yeah, strike has unfortunately never made sense. I mean, like, I get the concept of it, like, hey, this company's fucked up and we're not going to work for you till you fix your wrongs. But it's just like, if you're, especially if you're going on strike without a union, and it almost to me doesn't make sense to go on strike with a union. Maybe there's some special scenarios, but if you're going on strike, there's almost like, I want to say, like a 75% chance you don't have a union. You're
Right.
just going to get fired and replaced.
Well, it
Like,
depends on the job. So Amazon and Walmart are two examples, but there are a lot of jobs at that plant that will take um, anywhere from 5 to 20 weeks of training to complete to be able to be certified to run the machine by
okay.
yourself per OSHA standards.
Yeah.
So that's not a Goodyear thing. That's the law by
Hmm.
by OSHA.
Hmm.
So the difference is if everybody that builds the tires, it's like a 16-week training period to learn how to build tires.
Okay.
If everybody in that department goes on strike and says we're not going to work until this happens,
Hmm.
then they can't just fire all of those people and then bring people in because
They're like nine
that's
weeks into training, and then you have to fucking pay
right.
for another 16 for
Right.
someone
So
else.
that's 16 weeks worth of training that that's 16 weeks where tires aren't, you're not building tires at your full capacity. And then so Goodyear has a 2 week orientation period as well. So you've got essentially 18
18.
weeks
Fuck.
of, um, it could drop, production dropping significantly. And the only way to kind of patch that per se is to bring people in from other plants as sort of
Which like
like an
costs.
emergency crew.
Does that
But
cost more, I assume?
right, and it costs more because you may have to pay to put them up in a hotel, but
Hmm.
also if you're bringing them in from all over the country, you're dropping production all over the country
Holy shit.
because if you need 20 tire builders to run at 100% and you have to take 3 of them from a different plant so you can run,
Hmm.
you're dropping your production. And so that would be at every plant. If they took a little bit from each plant, production would drop and go down, and the company loses money. So that's why places that are very industrial, like Goodyear, when people go on strike, they're more apt to work with them because there's a lot of loopholes they have to go through and a lot of time it would take before they can bring people in that would be able to do the same job.
So you kind of have to be smart about your strikes. You kind of have to like strong arm them and have a position where
Right.
it would fuck them up. You can't just be like a Dairy Queen worker who fucking like took maybe a week to get trained.
Right. If people at Dairy Queen went on strike, Dairy Queen would fire all of them and then maybe shut down for a day or two, hire new people, train them all within a week, and then be right back up where they were before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is the advantage that is given to very industrial jobs, making companies more apt to work with those workers, because if we lose our entire department of tire builders, then we're fucked for, several months. So sometimes it is just easier to sometimes just either give them what they want or to negotiate into more acceptable terms from a company standpoint. We're not going to raise your pay by $3, but we'll give you $1.50.
Yeah,
right?
Some kind of compromise.
Or we'll raise it by $1, and then you can have this benefit, 3 extra days of vacation per year, or something like that. Something where the company can still work with the people and kind of come out on the winning side without being at a complete loss. Like, well, we've just lost production for 2 weeks because of a strike, and now we're going to lose $3 extra per person.
Yeah, I mean, something that the company can still afford. I mean, it's whenever you hear something like that, like when a company can compromise with its workers, it's like, they're working hard and that's a good company. But fuck, I've never thought about strikes this much. That's a crazy side of the industry that I've never like dove into. I want to back up quite a ways actually. You mentioned earlier, going back to our war conversation, that this was the question I forgot about, and I just remembered it. You don't think any country could win against the United States in a conventional war. Is
right.
Nuclear warfare conventional?
No, that is extremely what I would call very, very unconventional. Okay. Mostly because conventional war, in my understanding and my definition, is tried and true methods of modern warfare. So one country, the United States, say, so in a hypothetical, you have the United States and the Russian Federation, and they fight each other, and one invades the other. You have people in uniforms shooting at other people in uniforms, right? And then you have your information war. So conventional warfare, the definition has definitely changed since what you would think of like in the Second World War, where it is the British, the Americans, the French, the Canadians, and then the Germans. And so if you get into like the nuclear option, that is where I would hope that mutually assured destruction, which is a phrase that's been around since I think the atom bomb was created.
Probably before.
Because if the Russians fire an intercontinental ballistic missile at the United States is going to fire one back. Russia's allies are going to retaliate. The United States allies will retaliate, and then the world is destroyed. That's what's gets fucked. Right, and that's what stopped it so far. But all it takes is a country in a desperate situation, either country, Russia or the United States on the losing side. All it takes is one to be like, we're all going to die in this country anyway, so who gives a fuck about the rest of the world? And then you just throw everything in one final effort.
That's sort of why we got to take our big brothering seriously, I suppose.
Right. That is that is the grimmest peacekeeper I think that has ever been invented is the atom bomb, right? Because now everybody has one. I don't want to fuck with those guys. They have things that will destroy my entire country, but they're not going to fuck with me because I have the same thing. Everybody's got a really big gun and they're all pointing it at each other, basically.
Yes. Um, so yeah, I guess that's where my confusion was because I was like, well, maybe it's. I think I was confusing like modern threats with
Right,
conventional warfare, but like it's not conventional. Like, how many times has anyone used a nuclear warfare? Have we only used it? I mean, the U.S.
right.
just the twice, but
Nuclear never. Atomic is
oh, is that a big difference?
it's a stupid nerd thing or whatever. But so yeah, in that sense of what is understood twice, yes.
Okay, but
Um,
and are we the only country to have utilized them, or like the two times that people know of atomic bombs going off? Is that the only times they've ever gone off in
Not
the
gone
history
off.
of the
There have
world?
been so
Testing.
right. Those are the only two times they have been applied in the real world sense of it is time to drop these on a city,
I see.
where they have been used in the sense of ending a war.
Damn.
But yeah, you have countries, all over the world, thousands of missiles. They started blowing them up underground, right, or on islands in the Pacific Ocean
Hmm.
to test them. And then they said you can't do that, so they started launching them in space, and blowing them up in space. And they said you can't do that anymore. So now they've gone back underground, or they in the desert or whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Actually, there's a funny story about sort of underground testing. The first man-made object into space was I believe it was several hundred tons or 150 tons, a pothole cover, like a big manhole cover, basically,
Whoa.
where it was the cap, basically, this gigantic cap to a long tube that would hold all of the excess power when whatever bomb they were testing went off. And they said, it might not be a good idea. It might throw it up into the air. And they said, oh, it's fine. And all that pressure shot that big manhole cover um, at like 10 times the exit velocity of like to leave the Earth. It was like 10 times the speed or something
Holy
like that.
shit.
And so people still believe that it is. They think it's orbiting the sun, I think, is the current theory.
Oh my god.
And this was back in the 50s.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So it went straight through. Some people think it burned up in the atmosphere. Some people think it's orbiting the sun. I think it's hilarious, but I'm not. I'm not exactly sure where it is, but
Yeah, I mean, can you burn up straight metal like that? Like
well,
a pothole covered like
right. You
what
have to.
I don't know what that would do in space.
Right. I'm not sure about the composition. If anything, if it did make it to the sun to revolve around it, it's probably burnt up
Sure, in that case, yeah.
or been pulled
Definitely.
in, since it's in terms of the sun or even the moon, it's a very tiny piece of
Yeah.
matter. But you've got all the friction from the air and then trying to push its way out of the atmosphere. It's sort of the same as re-entry, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Except the benefit you get to leaving the Earth at 10 times the exit velocity or whatever is that you may be on fire for a few seconds, but as soon as you hit outside of the atmosphere, outside of, the entire atmosphere, then there's no oxygen and then it's out.
I see. Yes.
And
Yes.
then it can cool very quickly because there's no oxygen, it's very cold, and then either it's pulled in by the sun eventually and melted, or it orbits the sun or becomes the sun's satellite or something.
So potentially the most dangerous time for it to be around is while it's still in our atmosphere.
Right, that was its most dangerous time, was when it was leaving the atmosphere.
Damn. I'm going to back up even further. Um, it's crazy to backtrack this much. Um, I know Jackson Heights was a missile, like silo, or I guess I don't know exactly what to call it. Was it? Is it now, or was it ever a functioning, like, true fallout bunker for atomic or nuclear like waste, or was it just a launching site?
So it is still technically a functioning fallout shelter.
Okay.
Like I was like aforementioned, it was 40 feet below sea level,
So that's and
right?
what's it made like what's its
Steel,
walls, I guess.
concrete,
I
but
see.
a lot of the protection comes from the fact that it could be made of wood, but the fact that it's so deep
That far
underground
under.
offers that protection.
You said 40 feet
Yeah,
under sea
40
level?
feet below sea level.
I have no
So
concept of how long is a football field? 100
100 yards.
100
Yeah.
yards. Oh, it's too
And
many
then
conversions. I have no idea.
and then a
So
yard is 3 feet.
fuck. Okay, so that's not a
Yeah,
good
that's too much
comparison.
math for my monkey
Yeah.
brains.
Same.
Um, but anyway, it's really fucking far underground basically
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
because you have ground level and then you have sea level, which is the lowest surface,
Mhm.
right? And so you've got sea level, 0 feet at sea level, right?
Mhm.
Is the lowest viewable surface without going underground. In terms of like, I mean, you can see like into the water or whatever, but
Mhm.
that's and then you go below sea level.
Well, okay, so then maybe that's a better point of reference. Do you know the elevation of like the grounds on Jackson Heights?
I do not.
Okay. I Is that an easy Google search? I have no idea.
You
Um
could find like a topographic map of northeast Kansas, maybe.
Jackson County
Yeah,
elevation?
there's Jackson County, Kansas. Make sure it's Kansas because there's a
Oh,
Jackson County,
yes,
Missouri.
Missouri. Jackson County, Kansas elevation. Um let's see. Do I got this right? County highest point. Let me actually go into this because I see an answer, but I want to make sure it's the right answer.
Right.
Jackson in Kansas, city, town, soldier. Oh, I guess it's looking at soldier for some reason. Peak type, elevation info, 1,390 feet. So add 40 to that, and that's the difference. That's how far down it is.
I think that's probably a stretch because Kansas is very flat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, you have below ground level. It might be, I'm not sure what the scope of it is, but I'm not sure where ground level stops over there and sea level starts. Probably
Yeah,
not very much just because of the low elevation of Kansas.
right. And well, you know what? They're looking at the highest elevation in Soldier. And if you've been to Soldier, there's those Soldier Hills. I'm sure it actually there can be a pretty high point or like a fucking high terrace or maybe a little like
Right. And
not
so
not
that
quite a
might be
mountain.
um so a more realistic or yeah, a more realistic sort of thing was it might be 40 feet below sea level, but think of it maybe closer to like 80 to 150 feet below ground, basically.
Maybe I found oh no, we're looking at fucking Jackson Heights in Queens, New York. Never mind, whatever. Um yeah.
So it might be close. So if you think of like 80 to 150 feet below the ground,
Okay. That's
which that might be a better scope than just sea level because Kansas is very far from any sea.
oh, I have a good reference for what this is. You said potentially 80 feet, up to
Right.
80 feet. So
Or up to 150 feet below ground.
oh my god. Let me do 80 first. 80
Okay.
divided by I'm 6 feet tall. So about 13 of me tall below. 13 and a third of me below. That's pretty fucking far down. That is pretty fucking far down. So yeah, I guess that would definitely be suitable for I guess like a fallout shelter type of
Right.
thing.
And there are fallout shelters in Holton. Right. So a fallout shelter
Where out?
can the courthouse, I believe.
Oh, underground in the courthouse?
Right. And then there's
Okay.
there I think there's one place on the square where there used to be a store. I guess not really a store, it's more of an arcade where you pay money and you'd spend like a couple hours and play on an Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3 or whatever.
Was that on the corner by where like if I'm thinking of arcades in Holton, is it the Jets like across the street from there used to be a theater and now there's like an off
No,
the
that's
square bar?
Arcata. That's a liquor store.
Oh, that's okay. So I
This
just
was
saw the
on
fucking sign and
this
it's
is
not
on a
what you were
corner.
thinking.
Let me see if I can find what
Okay.
the actual street corner is. But I think right around the corner was there was like a sign for a fallout shelter.
Damn. That's kind of cool. And you said on the square?
Right.
Whoa. There's so many businesses like popping up and going away on the square. It's like I never memorized that Holton Square. Like I don't know if someone said, "Oh, hey, let's go to X, Y, or Z," um, and it was on the square, I wouldn't know what the fuck they're talking about. But it's such a tiny town. It's weird to not know where everything is.
All right. Well, I tried to find it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it looks like it was on the corner of 4th and New York in Holton.
Fourth in New York. Let me
It's called Distinctly Digital, was what it used to be called.
distinctly digital. Whoa. Holton, Kansas, New York. This is just I'm typing this in because I'm interested in this. New York.
So they closed down a long time ago. So looking at this picture, a more recent photo, it was replaced by Holton Community Hospital, Home Health and Hospice.
Oh, is that the one? That's not the thing outside of town. Oh no, that's
No,
like
this
by the
is
butcher. Is that by the?
that so that's what so this is across that place that used to be a theater you were talking about,
Uh huh.
where Distinctly Digital used to be is
Oh, we're
across
still
the
talking about
street
the
from
square.
Arcata. And there's a Buick dealership right across the street as
Okay.
well.
And so it's over in that area.
Right.
Oh, okay. I'm finally finding the square on my map.
Right. And I'm looking at the set of stairs right
Oh
now.
shit. Okay, Holton Community Hospital, Home Health and Hospice.
Right. So if you go on like down New York and look
Yes.
at the side of that building, there's a staircase leading down. That's where that used to be.
Shit. That's kind of cool.
Right. And then inside the courthouse, there's a big vault door and it goes down into a fallout shelter.
Damn. I should. I mean, it seems a little like doomsday preppy, but I should try to learn it, like where a fallout shelter would be like around me, because I would have no idea where I would go in a
Right.
place
And you
like
can
that.
call um whatever. I don't know how it works in ridiculously large cities like LA,
Mm-hmm.
but if you have like a municipality or whatever, you can talk to or like a clerk or something and be like, where's my nearest fallout shelter? And really, a fallout shelter is kind of a very general term. It could be anything from something at the courthouse or what used to be a missile silo that's now a school to Uncle Bob's 10-foot hole in the ground with a hatch
Yeah.
on top of it, right?
Right.
So, um, I guess it's different in Kansas because we're out in the country where a lot of that stuff is. Those aren't exactly targets.
Sure. Yeah.
So there would be, different from Los Angeles, right? Where it might be a big target because it's a large place for population and like business and a lot of commerce.
Mm-hmm.
Um, excluding Topeka, maybe just because it's a capital,
Yeah, like maybe they would target capitals,
right? But
Topeka
there
or
are
Manhattan or Wichita,
right there
or
are
not.
way more important places in Kansas, like Wolf Creek, for example,
Okay.
the
I don't think
nuclear
I.
power that it's a nuclear power plant,
Oh, okay.
and so
Huh.
there's places like that, and the the biology center in Manhattan that has all the diseases in it that they've got.
Mm-hmm.
If that got into somebody's hands or whatever. So this place isn't really like a place for high risk. You might see one, a mushroom cloud in the distance, and then you go underground, or even your basement might do. Because at that point, it's so far away, just need to shelter yourself from the rain that comes afterwards, things like
Fuck.
that, or whatever's left of the shock wave, right? If it would reach you. right? The basement might do around here, just to get down in the basement and don't go outside for a few weeks.
Yeah, yeah, maybe, right? A basement could do. I mean, it would rip the fucking top half of your house off, I'm sure.
Right, but it also depends on distance. So,
How how close you are
say,
to it?
right. So if
Yeah,
I live between Maeda and Holton,
sure.
and say the first place they hit would be Kansas City or
Mhm.
Wichita,
Mhm.
I am probably fairly safe from everything except the nuclear fallout, which would be the rain and the ash and stuff like that.
How long does stuff like that last?
Um, I am not sure. There's a lot of it's different now than it was, of course, in 1945 because it's completely, blown up in terms of the spirit of invention and skyrocketed in technology.
Oh yeah, I used to see those little graphs of like what the Hiroshima and Nagasaki
Right.
atomic bombs were compared to the mushroom clouds of modern actual true nuclear
Right.
weapons technology looks like, and that looks fucking insane. That's
And they've
insane
got
to look at.
it might be in the near future where it just moves completely past nuclear at all. There's a program right now being worked on. I think it's called like the Thor program or something like that.
Hmm.
Some goofy name. Um, where what they want to build are these big stations in space that orbit the Earth.
Okay,
And what they have is imagine like a cylinder for a revolver, right?
sure.
But instead of like rounds, they have these gigantic tungsten rods
Okay,
because tungsten's very resistant to heat. It's got a very high melting point. It can survive a drop from low orbit through the atmosphere. And so
okay.
what the plan is, what they want to do is to be able to drop these massive tungsten rods into a city, right? And that would cause the same amount of destruction that a nuclear bomb would cause, excluding
Without
the fallout. So it is all of the destruction with zero of the nuclear winter. Of course, you've got earthquakes. You're going to be fucking up the fault lines pretty good.
holy
But
fucking shit, that
but
would be brutal.
yeah. There's a Call of Duty game. I think it's Ghosts.
Okay,
That that is that is the future that they explore, is that it's up, and then the wrong people get their hands on it and start throwing it at cities in the U.S. I guess that would be the closest reference. I think there was a GI Joe movie about it, maybe.
sure. I didn't play Ghosts. I just got Cold War though, and that one's pretty fun. But I might
I
have
haven't
to. What's that?
I haven't kept up with any of the recent Call of Duties. I thought Ghost was. I think the story's kind of stupid, but
Oh, is it? Okay.
that like the actual story itself, like the character, there's cool dynamics. Like there's a dog. You control the dog through a camera, sort of stuff,
Oh, sure.
and that stuff's cool and everything. The actual story that revolves around the characters, I think, is stupid.
Not worth getting into then.
Right. Well,
Just a cool concept.
right. I don't think it's worth buying. I
Okay.
think it is worth watching somebody else
Oh, like a
play it
let's play
at least the
stream
first like hour to get that kind of scope of the. I think that it's called Odin in that instance.
of the tungsten.
Yeah, the big tungsten rods. I think their
That's
made up name
insane.
is Odin.
How would they launch that down
They just drop it and they let
just
gravity do the work.
from? Wait, I'm thinking. Did you say space or would it be like an
Space.
aircraft? No,
It would be from space. So like you think of like the distance the International Space Station orbits, or maybe closer. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
And so you're close enough um, where you just drop it straight, and the Earth's gravity picks it up and it pulls it in, and so it's
Yeah,
already going fast,
right.
and then it gets into the atmosphere, and
Going super
then
fucking fast.
the rest of gravity does all the work.
But I guess what I'm asking is like, what's the propelling force to like drop it? Like, how do you drop a space station into orbit?
Um,
It's
From
what
what
it,
I understand, the rods themselves are just held on by like say like mechanical hands. And so if they were to target wherever, right,
oh wait, oh
the
so
hands would just let go.
it's not the revolver that's slamming down. It's the revolver would be like the circle, the cylinder or whatever. It would
Right.
be dropping. Those arms would like be pushing those tungsten rods out, and
Right.
that's what would slam onto the city. I
Right.
was
Either
imagining the whole heavy ass brick of
oh
fucking cylinder
no.
coming down onto the city.
Um so I'm not sure what another good, if you look at if you just imagine just the cylinder of a revolver in your mind, just a cylinder by itself, and then point the front of it towards the ground,
Okay.
and then take like a straw or something and just you hold it there and then you drop it and let it go through the cylinder and then
Mm-hmm.
out on its own towards the ground. That's what it would be like. Is the tungsten rods are getting released individually. So each one would have the destructive power of a nuclear missile, basically.
Fuck.
And
That's still insanely
right.
brutal to think of.
So
Huh.
that's their next big thing. Because if you think about it, I would rather have an earthquake than fallout, nuclear winter, obviously.
Is that how we like it's weird to think of like a nicer version of the like an atomic or nuclear like a more humane version of a
Right.
nuclear bomb, but like
Right.
would that be an agreed upon thing in the future of like
Um,
we're
it might
gonna
be it might be a race if whatever I think the United States is kind of the head on it.
uh-huh,
If they just get to it first and they say, you can try to make it, but we're going to shoot you with these giant tungsten rods before you can.
right,
So whoever gets there first is going to have that edge and that new level. I think probably the final level in destructive power, excluding giant space lasers or whatever, something excluding the obviously ridiculous. Um,
yeah,
that's, I think, the final level of destructive power that is reasonable and foreseeable is these giant tungsten rods dropped from space that would generate as much, if not more, force than an ICBM without not without dealing with the fallout. So they are more of a short term. It helps you think more in short term because what's stopping people from nuclear weaponry from using it is not just the destructive power, but you have nuclear winter to think about where the entire globe's covered in ash and leftover material, and then like the chemical rain, right? That's stuff you don't have to think about with the tungsten rod. So you can think of it in much shorter terms. You like 20 years down the road, this place might be irradiated. That factor is excluded completely with the introduction of the tungsten rod.
Jesus, I mean, yeah, and that does seem very plausible. That seems like exactly what you said. It's foreseeable. Like that's obviously we can all imagine crazier shit like that, but like that seems like an actual thing that we could potentially see in our fucking lifetime.
Right. I
What
think we might. I think we could see it. I think that's something that I would give it another 15 or 20 years, but I think that is something that would be foreseeable.
that sounds right. 15, 20 years, maybe 25. I mean, and it's still, again, it depends on like the political landscape of the time because maybe we
Right.
wouldn't see it like as a necessary thing to, maybe we have the technology to make it and maybe we have a few of them, but maybe it wouldn't come to the public side because it's like,
Right. Or maybe everything goes
fucking
to
use it
shit
right.
before them and we don't get the opportunity to.
Also a possibility. Today is a great day to start your own podcast. Whether you're looking for a new marketing channel, have a message you want to share with the world, or just think it would be fun to have your own talk show, podcasting is an easy, inexpensive, and fun way to expand your reach online. Start with some gear that you already have in a quiet space. I'm just using some stuff I had laying around. My man Ed today, he's literally just on his phone. whatever works. If you don't have much and you do want to upgrade your gear, though, Buzzsprout has tons of guides to help you find the right equipment at the right price. Buzzsprout is hands down the easiest and best way to launch, promote, and track your podcast. We at the Ketchup Podcast use Buzzsprout, and I've personally had nothing but fun using their service. We get to see cool stats, like what countries we get downloads from, and they even offer easy ways to monetize podcasts you're working on. You'll get a great looking podcast website, audio players that you can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening, tools to promote your episodes, and more. Your show can be online and listed in all the major podcast directories like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more within minutes of finishing your recording. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners, and the team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. Following the link in the show notes lets Buzzsprout know we sent you, gets you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and helps support our show. So join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world, and let's create something great together. What were you gonna go into at Washburn? What were you going to pursue?
So my preferred career, I would have graduated with a degree in criminal justice. Then I would have gone and worked for the Kansas Bureau of Investigation.
I see.
They have a program or a position called technical field agent, which is a lot of gathering evidence, going to crime scenes and doing a lot of the grunt work.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have a program for those field agents where you eventually get moved into a position for like special agent, which are the investigators and the interviewers.
Okay.
So it's like
so you would work yourself to a career in which
I would be an agent, basically.
Damn.
But then I ran out of money, and then I gave up, and I'll go be an electrician. And maybe in 5-10 years, I'll maybe explore that again.
Sure. 1 second, Ed.
Yeah.
Are you headed out? Okay. I love you. I'll see you later tonight. Yeah. Cool. Sounds good. Yeah. Drive safe. Have a good one. I'll cut that out.
That's fine.
So what would you also mentioned earlier? What would you go into if you said? Does the union pay for the technical training? Because you also mentioned you entertained the thought of also going back to like what Washburn Tech and getting some technical education. What would you study there?
I would study basically go to get my electrician's card.
Okay.
And so I believe there's a program that the union offers where they will reimburse you so much every year for your tuition.
Okay.
Because I'm using, that's another one of the resources that the union offers is college reimbursement for classes that I would use and apply at the factory.
I see. Okay, that makes sense.
So if I go be an electrician for so many years and then American industry dies in 20 years, then I have an outlet because people will always need electricity.
That's true. It is good to have some form of backup usually. I mean, not and also, goddamn, let me turn this off. Open the. Okay, I'll be right back again. So sorry.
No, you're fine.
No worries. What'd you forget? My stupid pants, Oh, okay. Are you heading straight to work?
Yeah, fuck it.
Yeah, fuck it, right?
Okay, love you. Bye.
Love you too. Have a good one. So, not to get into your own like it feels like an overstep, but into your own personal finance. But with the Goodyear thing, because you want to get into like because it seems like an actual interesting like something you're interested in and would like to pursue. Uh, and you can make up, what did you say, up to 30 an hour potentially. Would you also ever entertain like putting some money aside throughout the years and going into criminal justice later when you could afford
Yeah,
to get through the program?
that's something I'd like to explore is coming back to possibly pursue criminal justice. I would like to after I get an electrician's card. So $30 an hour is for everybody is for that's the highest tier you can be paid without any sort of prior college stuff.
Oh, and then, but if
So
you get the electricians,
right, electrician, pipe fitter, mechanic, things of that nature. Um, that starts at $31 an hour. And I believe the longer you're there, you get a wage increase every so often.
so I would think it would be with that kind of increase. And are you part of the union? Can I ask that? Is that
Yeah, I
something
am.
you can ask?
I
I
am
th-
a member of the union.
okay, so you may have already mentioned that. Um, I think that that would be very plausible for you to be able to, especially if you got that electrician's card, to be able to still pursue that. Because it always bums me out when I hear people of like giving up on their dreams, and especially when their dreams is something really interesting like that. Because I've I know one person who was interested in that and was like, fuck, it'd be more plausible to just be like a teacher. I guess I'll be like an elementary student, like history teacher or whatever. And it's like, fuck, why didn't you go into criminal justice like you wanted?
Right,
Um, so yeah, I would still pursue that when you have an opportunity, because that
right.
sounds like a really interesting career to have.
And saying I gave up is kind of hyperbolic. It's you could
Yeah,
say
yeah.
more of a foreseeable hiatus, maybe might be a
you
more appropriate term.
probably said that for humor's sake, but
Right. But
um,
I'm also there's also the chance where if I do become an electrician, that that is work that I end up enjoying enough where I can open my own business and perhaps can pursue that for, the foreseeable future after industry dies and they have to close down all the plants in the United States and outsource everything.
right, and also, who's to say you can't still do both things? Like you could probably get to a point where you could run your own electrician business and work it up to a point where it's like it's sustainable on its own and you don't
Right.
have to do a lot of oversight, and then you could still go work regularly in like a from a like in criminal justice.
Right. Well, I also my brain works on the wire of having a very simple single track monkey brain where,
I'm there too.
like I don't want to half-ass two things at the same time sort of thing.
Yeah.
So if I were to pursue having my own electrician's business and um, then going into criminal justice, I would have to think about how long will it take me to perfect this business, and then by the time is it too late for me to make much of a difference in the criminal justice law enforcement community, where it would just be better off from a individual standpoint for me to just stay as an electrician if I've already got this perfected.
I, I mean, I think as far as criminal justice and laws and stuff like that goes, I don't think there's ever a time where it's going to be like not needed work.
Right. Well, I mean that is it too late for me? Like, will I be too old to devote my life to something completely different
Sure.
and just switch tracks, just off, just shoot off to the side and go, well, now I want to go be a KBI agent after my years in electricians.
I mean, it sounds crazy on paper, especially like phrased like that, but people fucking do that kind of crazy shit all the time.
Right.
People people stay, I don't know, like an educator for years of their life, and then they turn into literal rock stars. I know someone who did this. I know someone who was like an art teacher at some shitty local school out here in California. I mean, I guess it is California and it's near industry anyway, and she was in the arts, but she was just a art teacher at this tiny school, and now she tours like the country and the globe in a band that everyone loves. So, and
Right.
she's not like a young person. So you can get those crazy career changes later in your life. But it is almost more like, do I have the steam to do this? Is
Right.
it in
And
me to be able to do this?
another big thing is risk. So I'm very much oriented towards sustainability,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very wired to, I want to have a family.
Mm-hmm.
I want to raise children.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can do that and sustain that and raise my children well and comfortably through being an electrician, there might come a time where I can make peace with the fact that I no longer need to pursue something else, or, I can maybe study criminal justice as a hobby, but not pursue it as a career, the same way somebody would pick up woodworking, later on in their life, or wood
That
carving or stuff like that.
that's a very nice place to be able to be at, to be like, to be so fulfilled with your like the family and life that you created, that like the career choices you want to make doesn't mean much to you anymore. That's like a great place to be. So if you can't get there, you I mean, regardless, it just seems like you have great options moving forward
Right.
because
And so in my mind, if I'm in my late 30s and
Mhm,
I've got, a family,
mhm,
and however many number of children, and then I'm at a point where I need to pursue criminal justice as a second career to find that sustainability, I feel like in my mind that would mean I would be in a bad place to pursue it as a career instead of research it as something just as enjoyable, the same way that I, if I would try to focus everything, half into whatever work I do now and half into trying to be a famous author, right? If I have
mhm,
to put energy into writing, which I don't write much anymore,
mhm.
but if I try to put my energy into writing and then that at the same time, then I can't perfect either. They will both be at most adequate
Like
instead of trying to put full attention into one thing and then getting to a place where I'm comfortable with one thing and then starting to pursue the other. So like writing books is a lot more realistic, as a term of a hobby than like criminal justice.
sure, sure.
Because
Well,
I
I mean,
published my book at 17, and then I was like, I've set this high precedent for myself after I published my book, and then I just kind of stopped.
and I wanted to get to that at some point. So you let's actually save that for a little bit because I do want to talk about your book. Um, but let's back up. There is something about keeping your interests simply as hobbies, because I work in music, and as crazy and almost pretentious as it sounds to, someone who might, to anyone listening who might just have like a shitty 9 to 5 at an office or like work at Dairy Queen or something, it just turns into work. I mean, your hobby was very interesting to you at a young age, or whenever it first came to mind to you, but as soon as you get into whatever the industry it is that you want to pursue, it just turns into work like any other work. I mean, there is maybe a little more potential to do cool things and have fun with it, but I think hobbies stay interesting the more you keep them as just hobbies. Because
Right.
if you
And
try to turn them into a career, it's, well, fuck, this is a business now, and I got to figure out how to like professionally and efficiently run a business. And
right. And so and that doesn't mean obviously not to do your best in that,
yes,
but I do agree that there has to at some point be a separation of this is what I do for work this is what I do outside of work as a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you devote all your time to work and then the other half of all your time to making music, there's a lot of stuff you can lose out on. And
Yeah.
and of course that doesn't mean, obviously do your best with your music, right? And with writing music and performing and everything like that. But you also have to think in the sense of there are other things I want to do because the music industry can be a big risk.
It is. And that's kind of because like you, I also want a family and like kids to raise and whatnot. But I, on the other hand, this isn't a sustainable business. This is a scary, risky business, and it's not good. Like, if you're a musician, you're not supposed to have a family. It's just like on paper that doesn't work out.
Right.
But I kind of want to do it a little different, and like, it's not grown much and it's not turned into much, but it's not like I'm putting a lot of resources or time or energy into it either. But like, what we're doing right now is what I kind of want also my music career to be. I don't know that a lot of people pay attention to this, but this goes up this video and on YouTube, and when it hits like streaming services, it goes up under the name of Black Metal Productions. Now, the name of that being, I don't know if you've ever listened to black metal music. I love metal music, but black metal is a subgenre. It sounds like shit. Like there's no way around it. It's sometimes very good music. It sounds like shit. The production work is awful. Tongue in cheek. Anything I put out through Black Metal Productions, don't expect it to be too good. That's the joke there. But what I want to do with it is to do something where it is a little more sustainable, kind of following like ad revenue models of like modern YouTubers, of just doing like sponsorships, and do like daily content, whether it be podcasts or let's plays or some kind of like gaming video or some show we want to develop or something that we can do to put out and get sponsors and attract sponsors, and take that money and put it into funding our bigger projects behind the scenes, whether it be like creating a record and being able to do like small shows around the city, or even like small US tours, or if it gets big US tours. But I want the basis of my music career to be something that is kind of comfortable and sustainable, and that can, as far as sustainability goes in the entertainment industry, but something that I can do from the comfort of like going into an office instead of touring the fucking world all the time. And which on paper, again, sounds fun, but if you're on the road all the time, you're missing out on so much of your family's life. It's brutal. But that's unfortunately in the current industry. If you want money, if you want to make a living, you gotta tour. But not a lot of people are trying what I'm doing, and to the extent that I want to do it. Like, I haven't made that progress yet, but my vision for this is kind of something that doesn't currently exist in the music industry.
Right. So aspire for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Work towards that. What I think is also very important is at the end of the day, the metaphorical day, at the end of the day, when everything is said and done, for me, what doesn't matter to me is that I'm not this big famous author, that I'm not well known. That would be nice. I would like that, but that's not what's important to me as much as I am satisfied with this and I am proud of it. I am satisfied with my novel. I am proud of the fact that it is there. All the other stuff can come later, but the fact that I did it, just that by itself, is very satisfying. And, I am proud of that. And I will continue to aspire for more, but if it doesn't work out, I still published a book. I still...
That's something that a lot of fucking people haven't done and will never get close to.
And you still, I can't play an instrument to save my life, right?
Uh-huh.
You've got a skill, as much as you see people on the internet or whatever. It is a special skill to be able to play instruments and to make music. You know,
I do have to remind myself of that sometimes
right?
because I'm sure in a similar way, like you may have wrote a book and put it out and you were like satisfied with it, but maybe in the back of your mind you're like, ah, fuck, but like,
Well, there's always the human feeling to do more.
mm-hmm,
But I feel like at the end of with your music and everything, I
mm-hmm.
feel at the core, the important part is that you are proud of your work and you are not, I guess satisfied isn't the right word, but you are proud of your work and
Yeah, I think
you
proud's
know
the
you
right
can
word.
do more, you know, and not in the terms of like, oh, I should have, I should have done more, but in the terms of I did this and I am proud of it. It's the same as if you build a house, right? I
Mm-hmm.
could have added more to the house, but you've built the house. It's okay to take pride in these things and to feel proud, but it's still strive for
Better
more,
and greater,
right?
bigger things. That is, yeah, I think you switching the terminology makes a lot of sense.
Right. I think a lot of people get caught up in the I want to be big, I want to be famous, that they lose sight of, the fact that you are creating this art. Music is art, writing is art is art in the sense of, drawing and painting. Um, you know, you are creating things that are from your mind that nobody else has seen.
mm-hmm,
That is something that is absolutely fucking phenomenal, right? And
mm-hmm.
people will lose sight of the magic in that, trying to chase the big fame because they saw whatever idol on the screen. If I see Ronnie James Dio, who made a bunch of money and made great music, and I look at that and I say, I want to be like that guy, and I work my ass off and I release all this music and I don't even come close to him, and I've lost sight of that, right? What should be the focus other than trying to get to that point is that I've still made all this music. I've done what other people cannot do or are not motivated to do, right?
Right. Good fucking shout, by the way. First with the Faraday cages and then Ronnie James Dio. That
I
took me
love Dio.
back.
I'm more of a, you talked about black metal. I'm more of a power metal kind of guy.
Oh, sure. So you like Dragon Force and stuff like that?
Right. Well, older power
Old
metal,
power
like,
metal, sure.
right. Like Dio. And then like, if you mix it with like, there's some Metallica songs I enjoy.
I fuck with Metallica for
I
sure.
do I do enjoy Iron Maiden,
Uh-huh.
and then like 4 or 5 Slayer songs, maybe.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way about Slayer. Like, I can't sit down and listen to an album, but I'll find a hidden gem every now and then. I was like, fuck, this is a pretty good song.
Right. Black Sabbath is another good example.
Yeah, yeah. There's like maybe the first 2 albums I could maybe sit through.
Right.
After that, it's like I gotta kind of pick and choose, and it's like, yeah, I mean, these are fine.
Right. The hill that I will die on, no matter what anybody says, is that Black Sabbath was at its best when Dio took over for Ozzy.
You think so? I've listened to almost none of the Dio Sabbath. Not because I'm against it, but just I haven't sat down to actually listen to it.
So the album is the popular album is called Heaven and Hell. Is that
Okay, I think I've heard of it.
right? And then they did a show where they basically Dio performed all of these old Black Sabbath songs live, called Live Evil was the name of the show.
Okay.
And so you've got Dio's performance of songs like War Pig, for example.
Fuck. I couldn't imagine that. Like, I know it happened, but just like hearing that like on paper, I can't imagine that.
Right.
What that must sound like.
And I like Dio as a vocalist,
Uh-huh.
and as the way he kind of tells his story with his music, even if it was goofy, songs like Holy Diver and the videos for Holy Diver, even if it's really goofy looking and really stupid, I still think it's, I still think he's a good storyteller with his music.
For sure. Did you care for the Kill Switch Engage version of that song? Did you ever listen to that?
I listened to a couple seconds of it, but I am very much a traditionalist and purist when it comes to stuff like that. Sure. But that doesn't mean, people like what they like. I don't care, but this is what I like,
Yeah.
People are more than welcome to love the Kill Switch Engage cover more than the original. It's just not my thing.
Covers are definitely hit and miss, and it almost, it kind of depends on the individual person, because like I didn't really know Dio before that, like that Kill Switch Engage cover, and I found that cover early into me enjoying metal and like hard rock and stuff like that. So that was kind of like a young impression on me. But other covers, like if I hear a band now do a cover of a song that I liked from 10 years ago, I'm like, well, that was cool, I guess, but I'm going to listen to the original song.
Right. And see,
So,
I got into metal because Dad showed me songs like The Trooper by Iron Maiden
mhm,
and Holy Diver by Dio
mhm.
as jokes because he's not a big metal guy. And
Sure.
he showed them to me as jokes, right? But I told him, I said, that was your biggest mistake was showing me this thing, because now you've introduced me to metal. And some of those songs, like especially in terms of Slayer, and if you think like Painkiller by Judas Priest,
Mhm.
for sure, and then like Pantera, it's just noise that I can listen to, and I can rock my head back and forth while I'm driving and just sort of get lost for a little bit.
It's such good. I almost fucking so I assume you're at least aware of 98.9 The Rock. I don't know if you listen to it, but
The station?
yeah, the station.
Yeah, I have not listened to a radio in
Yeah,
over a year, but
I probably haven't in longer than that, but growing up in Kansas, that was my go-to station because my car didn't have a fucking aux cord or anything
right.
like that. And I used to work at Sonic in Holton, and at night between like 11 p.m. and midnight, they would have a segment called The Pit where they played like actual heavy songs, and listening to metal in the car is just like it is exactly what you said, such a get lost experience. And I, coming home from a long shift at Sonic, was blasting "The Saw Is the Law" by Whitechapel. I'm not a huge Whitechapel fan, but that song is really good. And they're a good band. They're just not 100% for me. But that song came on, which is a heavy fucking song to play on the radio, but that's what The Pit is for. And I was just headbanging along, and I was just so surprised they were playing that I almost got too carried away and wrecked my fucking car after a sleep deprived day
Right.
on the way back home from work. But
Those are also the best kinds of songs, though.
yeah,
Where you're listening to it and then you realize you've been going 90 miles an hour down the highway.
yeah, you're like, and when you black out and then come back, it's like, did I take that curve by
Right.
that one fucking curve by the parallel or whatever?
And your heart's racing and you're into it, and
yeah, that is fun. It's nice when you can still get lost in music. That's another thing you don't think about when you enter careers like that, because you almost like, for me, sometimes I analyze a song too much when I hear it play, or maybe sometimes when you read books, I don't know if this happens to you, but when you read books and like you come along a weird paragraph and you're like, why'd they write it like that? But if you can strip that away and just enjoy the art form for what it is in a car or bumping through, like, or I almost never listen to music in headphones anymore, but sometimes I'll put on a song in headphones and I'll just like lay in bed and listen to an album front to back in my headphones. And when you can just soak it in, it's just so good. And when you can get lost in it, it's
right. And I do.
An incredible experience.
I've had that with audiobooks before.
Uh-huh.
I've never tried audiobooks until a few months ago. Actually tried.
Same. I'm gonna pull up the one I got for free, but go ahead.
So I'm very much a big Tolkien fan.
Okay.
So I have been. I mean, I started off the Fellowship of the Ring, the movie came out. Just a few months. I would have been 11 months old when it came out.
Okay. Yeah.
So I have been watching those almost since literal birth. and then getting into the books, and then reading through the books, and then reading like the Silmarillion and like the Book of Lost Tales and all those encompassing stories that take up so much more of the world, and then listening to it in audiobooks. The Audible has a really good unabridged version of The Lord of the Rings narrated by Robert Inglis,
Whoa.
which it's very nice, and it is kind of a long read, but it's very much worth it.
I've been getting into fuck, I haven't read in a while. I've developed I used to read a lot, but that was kind of cuz I found reading enjoyable when I had to do like AR points, because I wouldn't get like a library book. I would find like I used to fucking read those Halo book. I don't know if you ever played Halo, but
Oh, all the time.
Halo's incredible. I used to read those books for AR points. I fucking fell in love with them. I'd read some Stephen King occasionally. But as soon as like and like I enjoyed the books, I thoroughly enjoyed the books, but as soon as I didn't have to do AR anymore, I dropped off. Like
Right.
I didn't feel like I needed to read anymore.
There's that competitive edge was gone.
Yeah, right.
I think I still hold the elementary school record for AR points that I secured in, I believe, 5th grade. It's like 560 something.
Damn, that's impressive. I don't. No, I can't even begin to recall what I got up to. That's so fucking long ago. I have a friend, my drummer, who's really into reading, and he's been recommending me some books. I've got I see it right now. I'm trying to read the top of it. It's called The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion by Jonathan Haidt. I'm like fuck, I got like halfway through it and then I just haven't picked it up again for a long time, but it's an incredible book. It's a really good read. It sounds very serious. He's a very funny guy. There's like, it's like serious commentary and research and studies that he's done interspersed with his like comedic like phrasing or little quips and stuff like that. That's fun. But what got me into Audible was he also mentioned and I haven't listened to much of it because this was almost too big brain, but when I was listening to it, it was interesting. And I think I could get into more Audible books in the future. What did he say I should read? Carl Sagan, The Dragons of Eden?
Carl Sagan's the space guy, wasn't he?
That's not. Oh, like Pale Blue Dot, maybe.
Yeah, that's. I know Carl Sagan was the scientist that Neil deGrasse Tyson worked with, or something like that. Before.
Oh, truly.
Carl Sagan's been dead for years.
Yeah, it does look like he's a space guy. I don't know him that well, or I haven't like dove into his work much, but yeah, Carl Edward Sagan was an American astronomer, planetary scientist, cosmologist, so much shit, astrophysicist, astrobiologist, author, and science communicator. That's a lot to dive into. Maybe that's why I couldn't get into it. Because like space is interesting to me, but once I've tried to read a Neil deGrasse Tyson book before, and once they really fucking dive into it, it's like, oh, I got soft brain. I can't take it.
I do not like Neil deGrasse Tyson.
You don't? What's your beef with Neil deGrasse Tyson?
I just think Neil deGrasse Tyson is way too full of himself.
He's a showman.
Yeah, and be one or the other. You can be Bill Nye or you can be Carl Sagan. Don't fucking be in the middle. It's infuriating.
Yeah, to try to be this funny guy who knows a lot of but I mean, I guess that is Bill Nye. But
if you're doing
it Saganistically, I guess is how I want to say that.
Because Carl Sagan was not an entertainer.
No.
In the sense of what you would think of now. So it's fine if you are anally attentive about being right. But going into the public, where you look at all these people as stupid and uninformed, is not the best way to go about it to be a well-liked figure.
Sure, sure. I saw a clip of I don't know, like a 7-year-old asked like a very impressive question to him at some panel, and it stumped him, and he was very taken aback. But he kind of did this circle conversation and talking where he didn't admit that he didn't know the answer to that, but he
Right.
just talked circles around this 7-year-old, um, like hypothesizing about what could be true about it, and then just kind of gave a bullshit answer and was like, yeah, that's my answer, I'm right, whatever. So I guess I can understand people's beef with him. I guess I don't pay attention to him enough to like truly be annoyed, but I understand how some people could be annoyed with the
Right.
way he expresses himself.
Coming back to Audible,
Yes.
if you like stuff in the background while
Mm-hmm.
you work or do whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I recommend, I don't know if you're religious in any sense, but they have a version of the Bible on Audible that's free. It's
That's
the King,
interesting.
it's the King James version, so it's kind of heavy on the words.
Okay, big brain words.
Well, not big brain, just old timey.
Old time. Yeah, yeah.
Ones you may be listening to and you're like, oh, let me look that up real quick because I've had to do that too.
Sure.
But
Sure.
it's like 85 hours long
Damn.
because
I've
it's the entire Genesis to Revelation.
I've never like sat down to read the Bible, but occasionally someone like comes up with like, hey, don't have you heard about this story from the Bible? And they get into it and it's like, holy shit, this is something you'd hear from like, this is gonna be kind of hyperbole, but like an action movie or book or some
Right.
shit like that. Like,
So when people think of the Bible, I can almost guarantee most of the time they think of the New Testament or not just or specifically the gospel that talks
oh,
about love and patience and all the teachings of Jesus onto his disciples.
sure.
Um, what people also don't understand is that there is an entire Old Testament,
So you're saying
and
I should get into that brutal, nasty Old Testament stuff?
if you enjoy the First Testament is very mythological
Sure.
in the way it's presented, especially in the King James version. There is a lot of war. There's the numbers may be exaggerated, but lots of people, are killed. A lot of that is the Hebrews coming out of Egypt, right?
Uh huh.
And then taking over land. So there's a lot
Okay.
of war, and there's a lot of, there are good stories, even if you're not religious.
Yes.
They're good. There's a reason that it's the greatest story ever told. It's not just told from a religious perspective, but um, on the perspective of just the content of the stories,
Mm-hmm.
starting even from Genesis, and then the children of Adam and Eve, and then the sons of Abraham, and then, the people of Moses, and
Mm-hmm.
then Israel as a place.
I'm sort of religiously uninformed, I suppose. What isn't it something? Isn't it a different religion when you just follow the Old Testament?
So it's a big misconception with Judaism, where when people think of the Torah, they
Okay.
think of just the Old Testament, but there's a whole big thing of there's a lot of other writings that are in that make up the Torah.
But
Other
it's just that the Old Testament is a part of it.
right,
I
and
see.
so when people think of like split the Old Testament and the New Testament, they think of, oh, this is the part that the Jews believe, that's their Torah, but there's a lot more to the Torah than just the Old Testament.
So it's not. So they shouldn't think of it like that. It should be like, oh, this is just this shared belief system we have in like
Right.
two different
The
views.
Old Testament is more of the history.
I see.
A good part of the Old Testament is the history, chronicling stuff, you know, writing
See,
all this information down. And the Jews did adopt that into the Torah, but they have a lot more that's in there and a lot that differs from, like me being Roman Catholic. There's a
uh-huh,
lot of stuff that differs, that is the foundation of my religion.
sure.
But where the Torah starts, outside of the Old Testament, is where that starts to differ. And then you
Yeah.
get into stuff like where they don't recognize Christ as the Son of God. They just see him as just another prophet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, and there's reason they did have a lot of false prophets, but that's one of the only things that makes me uncomfortable about Judaism is just that the rejection of Jesus as the Son of God, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've tried to talk about that before, and I've had people call me anti-Semites and say, "Oh, you hate the Jews." I don't. It's a disagreement. That's
It's a
it.
yeah. It's a, people have to have a different like a be able to have conversation about differences of views. I mean,
Right. And
I
so it
I
just makes me uncomfortable that just like, this is the same God that brought your people out of Egypt, but now these have been rejected, but they've got their own reasons. And I would absolutely love to sit across from somebody who practices Judaism and just talk and see where we see what's, because they're similar in a lot of aspects. Um, Roman Catholicism and Judaism they do have similar aspects a lot more than you would think of Judaism and like being a Baptist or a lot of other Protestant branches.
well, and this is kind of a controversial statement that might like rub people the wrong way, but like to an extent, a lot of I and I'm kind of uneducated, like I said before, but to an extent, it feels like a lot of religions, not just Catholicism and Judaism, but like a lot of them have sort of a shared, not necessarily beginning, but almost like a shared moral and belief system in some regard.
Right. That's where that Old Testament comes in as almost the mythology.
So is the Old Testament, it's outside of Catholicism and Judaism too? Is it in like I guess I don't know popular
Um,
the names of popular like Middle Eastern and Asian religions, but
so like Islam, they have the Quran, right?
sure.
I am entirely unformed of what the contents of the Quran are.
Okay.
I have maybe an understanding that it may be similar, um, in a sense, but so like the after the Protestant revolt or Reformation or whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
um, there was a lot of you know rejection of the Old Testament, and so a lot of Protestant branches, like people who would call themselves non-denomination,
Okay.
um, and Baptists, you know,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps Lutherans, and they they treat the New Testament very seriously, but then they treat the Old Testament as just stories,
Okay.
which in a sense they are just stories. It is technically the mythology, but there are also lessons you need to take from those and to learn about God, not just about like, well, you shouldn't steal or you shouldn't cheat on your wife or whatever. There are other stories that do revolve around God that I think they kind of try to look past and take it literally. Like Jonah in the whale, for example.
uh-huh.
Jonah was not swallowed by a whale.
Sure.
The whale, it was a metaphor for a a pit of depression, a mental pit of depression and anguish,
Okay.
right? So if you think of it more like that, where if you look at those stories where the whale that swallowed Jonah was, you know, that was something where he rejected God and he fell into this pit of depression and he was swallowed by it and he remained there for some time before he reconciled with himself and then
Mm-hmm.
left the whale, right? That sort of, if you think of it from that sort of sense, the Old Testament starts to make more sense.
Yeah. That's I mean like any kind of, not to call it like, not to compare, I don't know, apples to oranges, I suppose, but like any kind of like children's made up fairy tale. It's not that like this fictional character actually did this crazy fucking thing. It's that like look at the overarching theme of what's going on
Right.
here, and like pick that apart and make sense of that rather than some guy got swallowed by a whale. No, I mean like
Right.
there's a message behind this, and you have to like dissect that and be
Right. And
able
so
to understand what they're talking about.
the problem of biblical interpretation comes in when people will take it literally, and they will
Uh-huh.
take some parts literally. There's some parts you have to take literally, talking
Yes.
about the different wars, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but then there are parts of like Jonah and the whale, or I'm still half and half on the book of Daniel with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the going into the pit of fire and coming out unscathed. I think that was a miracle.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
so that's a whole. The Bible's got a lot of great stories, but there are people that will say you either take all of it literally, or it is all a metaphor. And I believe personally that that is incorrect. That there are things you have to take literally, like um, like David, right? After David killed Goliath and became king, and his faults and his reconciliation with God, those things you take literally
Mm-hmm.
because he did sin and he did pay for it in the form of his child and I believe his marriage, and then he reconciled. Right, that stuff you take literally, but then you get stuff like Jonah and the whale, which is very obviously, I think, a metaphor, and parts of Revelations, I think, can be interpreted as a metaphor if you look at the language of the time, um, and think of it as perhaps a criticism, a metaphorical criticism of society at the time, rather than actual beasts of fire coming down from heaven to do wreak havoc and pass judgment upon people.
Is this kind of misinterpretation where the argument comes in of like when people say God, like everyone's God is different and God is your own interpretation, like individual by individual, like even if you follow like a Christian path, your God you may interpret him um as different than your neighbor who is also a
Right.
Christian.
So there are, and I talked there where I am anyway. There are a lot more Protestants than Catholics, from what I have gathered.
Yeah, I would say
Um,
so.
and so
There are a lot
everybody's
of Catholics, but there's a lot of both groups.
right. Where I am, I have yet to meet another Catholic.
Whoa,
Um,
wait, what do you mean where you're at?
like where the people I talk to at work, sort of thing.
Oh, at work. Okay.
Yeah, I've yet.
There's a strange there's actually a big amount of Catholics in like the Wetmore area.
Right, and they are in Holton too. It's just
Okay. Just
these
but
are these are people that are very old, most of
okay.
them.
Yeah.
And so, I talk to these people about it, and I think, and I've told them, it says we have our differences, obviously, but it comes down at the bare of all things, laid bare, it comes down to faith.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can believe in all of the saints that are there, that are canonized by the Catholic Church,
Mm-hmm.
and I can recognize the Virgin Mary as the Mother of God, which I do, but none of that matters if I don't have the faith.
Yes.
And on the opposite side, a Baptist may not recognize the saints and may not recognize Mary,
mm-hmm.
and they may have their own beliefs, but if they don't have any of the faith, that's where it goes wrong. So I may recognize saints and a Baptist might not, but
Okay.
that faith is what it comes down to as important.
This is kind of counter to what you just said. Not like making a case against it, but I know recently I heard the viewpoint of like, well, if you're a Christian and if you're not going all in on being a Christian, as in being a Catholic and following like the true roots of it, then what the fuck are you doing? Like, I've heard of like people being very anti-Protestant, and I guess what I'm asking is like, is that a large group of people? Do Catholics think Protestant religions are bullshit? Like, I understand their beliefs aren't the same, but do they kind of frown upon them?
Well, I do
I
personally get a bit bitter sometimes.
Sure.
That's something that's a personal religious sort of thing. The same way, I get uncomfortable with the thing with Judaism that we discussed earlier.
Sure.
So, but at the end of the day, I can be as uncomfortable with however it wants, and you can believe in the saints or you don't. But again, it's just I don't care if you are a Lutheran or Presbyterian. I don't know, Calvinists are kind of weird, but a Methodist or a Baptist or a non-denomination Christian or whatever, as long as you have that faith in God and in Christ and in the Holy Spirit, that is what matters.
Okay, so interesting follow-up then. I went to a Methodist church growing up. What is the difference, you would say, between someone who identifies as a Methodist and one who identifies as Catholic as far as beliefs go? Because
Right.
I didn't, unfortunately, absorb much while I was there.
I'm not too terribly because I never got to talk to any Methodists. There's a lot of Baptists that I met in Holton.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's never something I personally researched out of curiosity.
Sure.
So I wouldn't.
I wonder
Obviously,
if that's an easy Google search.
you've obviously, you've got the fact that Catholicism, technically speaking, is the direct route,
Mm-hmm.
but you get in, that's all mumbo jumbo when it comes down to, stuff with the faith. And people will talk, I'm speaking in a broader sense now, not just between Methodists and Catholics. People will say that, I believe it is a Baptist belief, I may be wrong, that you may be the worst. So like if Adolf Hitler had faith in the end, right before he died, he would have gone to heaven. But the counter to that is, if Hitler had good faith, those things would never happen. So people will say faith without works is nothing, but faith is what guides the works. If you have faith, then the works will come later.
Okay, yeah.
Faith will lead you into those good works.
So interesting. So, and Hitler never had that faith.
Right. Well,
So
Hitler believed there was some weird religion that he made up. He's burning in hell. Don't worry about that.
Sure.
But so it's like, if you think of like, if I say I have faith that I am a Catholic, but I don't go out and do community service and volunteer to prove that I have faith, then that faith is worth nothing. My counter to that is, those things are a product of my faith. I'm not to prove, but
so
shit. this is the crop that the seed of my faith is sown, to speak in a very dramatic sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So these works and these actions, are the result of what my faith has done. I have faith. I practice my faith, whether public or private. Mm-hmm. Then the works are a product of that. Public works or acting in secret or whatever, that should be the product of your faith. You should not be going out and saying, I am cleaning this up to prove that I have faith. I think that, of course, you believe, people have their own beliefs, but I think personally that is the wrong way to do it.
It seemed, yeah. It's weird to try to prove your religion.
So in a non-religious sense, speaking, so in more striking political matters, if you think of it in the sense of somebody who says, I go to this impoverished African community and help to prove that I'm not racist. Mm-hmm. Instead, it should be, I am not racist, and this is a product of that. The fact that I am helping, because I already love these people. I love everybody as they are, and this is a product of that, not I am doing this because to prove that, I love people for who they are.
It's a
Right.
very good comparison.
Like, cause could you imagine somebody being like, I'm not racist. I went to, look at that. You see all this good work I'm doing for these communities. It's the same
almost
way.
like someone who touts it versus someone who just fucking goes out and does it because
It's very
believe.
in a crude sense, it's very masturbatory and self-congratulating that like,
yeah, it is.
I'm not racist. You see all this shit that I did, instead of, this is just a product of the fact that I'm a normal, loving person, that I will help these people, not to prove anything, but like, because that's just how I am. This is a product of how I was raised and how I feel and what I believe.
That's a great comparison. I just looked up the differences. I got a whole fucking Quora write-up. I'm going to try to summarize it real quick. I don't think I'll do a great job because there's so many paragraphs on this, but let's see here. Catholics and Methodists hold a few core beliefs in common, such as belief in the Trinity and the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Other than this, they have many theological differences. Methodists believe Scripture is first and foremost the rule of faith. Catholics treat Scripture and tradition equally in determining what to believe. Okay. Catholics have 7 sacraments. Methodists only have 2, baptism and communion. Salvation, something about salvation. Catholic Church teaches that all who are saved by being joined to the Catholic Church. Methodists believe faith in Jesus Christ is necessary for salvation, but do not regard the Methodist Church as necessary for salvation. Oh, interesting. Then they have some social issue differences between divorce, homosexuality, abortion, which Methodist Church allows for divorce. Catholic holds that only 2 people are married. Homosexuality. Methodist holds that it's not compatible in a Christian life. There's no homosexual unions. Those in homosexual unions are not prohibited from receiving sacraments, but they are not allowed to be ordained as ministers. Catholics regard them as gravely sinful. Abortion Methodist doesn't have an official stance. Catholic holds that human life begins at conception. Then some other differences that I won't get into. So there's some social issues for sure, but did you pick up anything between the Scripture and tradition and sacraments and salvation?
No, I think the core beliefs is what will matter. Like you talked about, that Jesus died and was resurrected. I wanted to touch on some of the stuff about some of the gay marriage and divorce and abortion things. So those should not be legal issues, in my opinion. Yeah. So, and I'm thinking in terms of, I want to do good through my religion, but this country is secular, right?
Yes.
So in a religious standpoint, I have my own views about this, but in terms of social through the government, I do not care.
That is a very worldly. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that's kind of a rare view for a Catholic to hold.
So I have my own views about this, but I will offer advice and I will do whatever. The decision is ultimately yours. I'm speaking in terms of abortion.
Sure.
The decision is ultimately yours. And from a non-religious standpoint, from just a purely look back at social standpoint, I could not care less what you do. It's none of my business.
Like the union.
Right. It's none of my business what you do, with yourself and your family. Now, obviously, it gets different if it's something personal with myself, but that's something I have to deal with on my own. Then if it's personal, then you can turn religious and not so much social. But speaking in the terms of everybody, I don't care. Love who you want to love. You could, it sounds weird to say, but you can have an abortion if you want, like get married, smoke pot, shoot guns, own guns, whatever, you know, with
Kind of the
everything
beauty of America.
right, everything within the constraints of the law, of course.
Yeah.
But I have my own religious views that should not matter in a government sense. If this country was not secular, maybe it would be different, but it's not,
Yeah.
or it
If
is
this was,
secular. It
yeah.
is secular. So my opinion religiously should not matter on in terms of government stuff. If you ask for my personal opinion, I will give you my personal opinion. And if you want to base your decision or whatever off that, that's none of my business. I will not try to influence these half government, half social debates, you know, through religion because people
Religious
believe
views.
in different things. I have friends who are Hellenistic, right?
What's that mean?
That's like old like Greek religion,
Oh, interesting.
right? You know, and they have their own way of, you know, and so I don't care about the social stuff from like a me standpoint. I just want to be left alone and do my own thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So, do you then think that more government officials in the future should we be electing more secular and non-religious government officials who don't have preconceived notions on, like, people who are so deeply rooted into their own religion that they can't identify with those outside of their religion,
right,
which is
so
most of this secular nation?
um, there are good morals to take from religion,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Um, so you know, and of course those morals should be adopted by everybody. These, you know, don't kill, don't steal, you know,
Yeah, that's
stuff,
just like duh.
right? And or I should say, don't murder and don't needlessly steal. There are times where stealing may be, you know, crucial, but and it's very hard to try to separate religion from some of that because these are just things that people should do. These are
Yes.
just the common, you know, sense of morality, that line, you know, in terms of a regular construct. But if people start to, or it becomes inappropriate in my eyes, where they start to blend that in and try to, this is, you know, because I believe this goes against my religion. This is why I don't support this. That's where it becomes inappropriate. Now, if it goes against your morals, which you so happen to have instilled from religion,
Mhm.
that is different because these morals are translated into more, you know, these morals are translated into every day, right? Because every day you use your morals, and there is a point where it becomes separated from your religion,
Yes.
unless you're extremely rigid, like, you know, unless like you're a Mormon or you know, or Jehovah's Witness, stuff like that. But in a less strict sense, you should be able to separate your morals from your religion.
Yeah, and I think religion is a good, it sounds weird to call it this, but religion is a good tool to build your morals. But I absolutely agree that you can, that's a very separatable thing at some point if you are religious and if you aren't religious. I
Right,
mean, obviously you can have morals if you aren't religious, but
right. And so, um, to answer your question, I guess in a more direct sense, people that are deeply religious that are in politics do not bother me because it is their right to be able to do this without discrimination, right? Race,
mhm.
religion, creed, sex, you know, gender, all that, disability, all that stuff.
Mhm.
It's what's inappropriate is when they try to pull the religion into the policy making, right?
Yes.
Well, because God's teaching, it should not be that I feel like that's inappropriate. It should be just from a moral standpoint. I disagree with this because I believe that this child has a life when it is conceived, you know, not that the life that God created begins at conception. There are ways to bring about this without involving religion. if that is your moral standpoint, it is technically there is a difference from your moral and religious standpoint,
Even though
but
there could be a lot of crossover, and maybe that's where the confusion lies for
right,
those who aren't as religious, because they just assume that maybe when they make these standpoints, it's rooted in a religious way, but no, it's just like that's what I believe. That's
right. And so the first step to reaching a more secular government is to start recognizing when that is inappropriate,
yes.
when to realize that you are now blending religion into this point and not just your sense of morality.
And you know what? I think the US has been doing pretty all right with that. I don't think they tried to put religion in much of anything. I mean, there's the whole like swear on the Bible thing, and there's
Right. Well, people can, you're able to swear on whatever you
other
want.
things. Yes,
Right.
yes.
I saw somebody swear on a comic book one time. I think I may be misremembering, but
I'm sure they have.
so because they use that Bible as the tether for something you hold a strong moral value in.
Mm,
It's the same thing as saying I swear on my mother's grave, right?
yes.
Something you wouldn't dare to, deface or defame, right?
Mhm.
Through your word. That's the same sort of principle. If you put your hand on the Bible, if you're like a deeply religious person, you're in court, you put your hand on the Bible and you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, right? You've now, in your own mind, not publicly, but in your own mind, made that promise to God that, and so you're not just breaking the law, but you're breaking, the code or whatever you've set with yourself between whatever religion you follow. You could do it on the Torah, you could do it on the Quran, whatever, but you make that bond consciously, but not publicly, with um, whoever you worship, right? And in breaking the law by lying under oath, you're also separating yourself from your religion and cutting yourself off, which has its own consequences outside of the court standpoint.
So maybe it's more of an issue of public perception than it
Yeah,
is what you're swearing on, because like if you do it as like a comic, and I mean, I'm kind of speaking hypothetically here, but like, and that comic means a lot to you, and you have full faith in that comic, but to the out outer world is just, they're like, that's not a Bible, that's just some fucking comic book. What are you
right.
doing? Like, you don't mean what you're saying right now. So like, why don't you have a Bible, you dickhead? Then maybe there becomes not really an issue, but more of a push to be like, or not even a push. Maybe it's more of a like another misconception of like an overstep of religion being in the government, but it's just public perception of, why are you doing it on anything else than the Bible?
Right. And so, again, from a personal standpoint, I couldn't care less what you swear on
Right? Who gives a
when you go to
shit?
court. But when it comes time for me, if I ever have to swear on anything, it will be the Bible, you know, the nothing, the complete Bible.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The unscathed, unchanged,
Right.
classic Bible.
Well, every Bible that hasn't had anything removed, there's a Latin phrase called nihil obstat, which means nothing left out.
And is that at like the top of the book?
It's sometimes it's in like part of the foreword or anything. It can
Sure,
be in the front or the back. So
sure.
that just means it's because there are different Protestant religions that have either added or removed books
Yeah,
from the Bible.
yeah.
You know, some Protestant Bibles may be shorter than a Catholic Bible, stuff like that.
Right, right.
And so that the nihil obstat version of any Bible it's the full, nothing left out. This is everything.
I see. That makes sense. I want to pivot, and I think after that we'll wrap up. I want to talk about your book. I have no idea what the fuck your book is about, or what it's about, or where I can get it. Let's talk about your book. What did you write? What did you create? Let's talk about
Okay.
your art.
So it is between the line of dark fantasy and regular fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Dark fantasy meaning, I guess in this term, just more grim topics, and then regular like adventure fantasy, right?
Okay.
So like a big quest. I am finding the link right now, and I will send you the link for it.
Cool.
Um, but it is a fantasy novel. It's a very inspired fantasy novel by people like Tolkien and Lawrence Watt Evans and a little bit of C.S. Lewis. I never really much enjoyed the Chronicles of Narnia myself, but
And you said earlier, Tolkien, is that the Lord of the Rings?
right.
Okay. And who was the other author you mentioned?
Lawrence Watt Evans. He writes more kind of witty stuff,
Oh,
and
okay.
he's written books. There's maybe familiar with The Misenchanted Sword, about a soldier who gives a sword to a wizard who just throws every single enchantment he can on there.
That's kind of badass. I'm pulling it up right now. I haven't read it, but it looks interesting. It looks popular for sure. Interesting.
But this is um, the book that I've written. At its core, it is just a regular fantasy, going to like good versus evil, very bare bones, just there to kind of sit and enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go ahead and throw that link over there.
Cool.
It's not very long. It's just there's adventure and there's battles, knights, a
Mm-hmm.
dragon maybe,
Maybe. There might
some
be a dragon in my book. Who knows?
some otherworldly beings beyond, regular perception.
So this is a fucking kind of a stretch, but like dark mythology. Now I listened to the Dark Souls podcast interview you did with, I forget his name, but
Oh, the Mr. Nico, yeah.
I listened to that, and so I'm gonna assume then. Well, yeah, based off listening to that, you're also a fan of Dark Souls. Is it at all? I haven't played much of that game. I've actually never played that game, but I've seen some Let's Plays and streams in it for sure. Is it at all kind of inspired by that dark kind of fantasy
There
shit?
is a there is a slight inspiration there, but the story in Dark Souls, I mean, that can be a whole nother, you know, 10-hour podcast. It's a very grim story where
Okay,
kind of no matter your choice, everything feels wrong. This is, there's a very clear good and a very clear evil in this book,
I
which what
see.
makes it like the
Digestible.
right, like the light versus dark, This is the king whose grandfather was disposed from the throne years ago,
Uh
and so
huh.
now the rightful king has come back to take his throne from, you know, this corrupted force. Sort of,
Hmm.
it's just this is what it is. I'm not. I've got my own mythology stuff and my own world, my whole mythos thing, but like I tried to not make it more than it was, where it's just an adventure fantasy.
It is good to, I mean, and that's again in all art forms. It's a great like stance to take on your work, is not trying to make it more than it is. Like tell your story and keep it as not necessarily short, but as concise as possible.
Right.
Um, uh, I think a good friend of mine was telling me that like it's more interesting when you don't beat around the bush. Now, if you have this long drawn out, I never read the books, but um, um, like a Game of Thrones or even a Stephen King, where it's long as fuck, and on the outside, you may assume that it's convoluted, but no, really, every single sentence and every single piece of the path and of the story all comes together to this one big conclusion.
Right. Tolkien
That's go ahead.
Tolkien does that very well with especially the Lord of the Rings, where so Tolkien has this entire mythology written down,
Mhm.
nearly all of it published by his son before his son passed away as well.
Mhm.
So the Lord of the Rings takes place as just a segment in that mythology, but
Oh fuck.
it does have it has so it takes place in the third age, right? And there were two ages before, which are explained in the Silmarillion, which is almost like his Bible. That's, in my opinion, his magnum opus. Um, and he
Oh,
will,
go ahead.
and so he makes it understandable. So there are things that call back, to those other stories that somebody who has read them may understand, but they're presented in such a way where somebody who has only ever read The Lord of the Rings and is not interested in anything else can still understand the story, right? Because he
Mhm.
makes it about so much more than just this is part of history. The story about the individual people, it's a lot. It's a very very digestible book, but if you think of it in a big sense, it can seem very overwhelming for somebody who's just come in to read, the Fellowship of the Ring.
Right.
So
I
if
see.
somebody who would read that, right, but then who realizes there's all this stuff that I don't know about, he doesn't make you feel like you should have read this or that. It's you are
That's
reading
nice.
this. There are references to these old stories you may not understand. However, this is the smaller picture and some insights on the bigger picture.
That is nice, and I like it when like games do that too, like a long running game series. But it's like, fuck, you don't have to play the other 8 games before jumping in here. Like this is just this concise story in this universe where
Right.
it'd be
And
cool if you
that's
did know everything, but if you just want to pick it up from here, you're gonna understand it.
that's what Dark Souls does very well is
Truly,
of
yeah.
the three games in the main Souls series, none of the stories are technically directly connected, but they all follow the same theme where you could only play one of them and you would get the general idea, but there's a lot more understanding if you play them first through third about how the flow of time works and
Hmm.
everything. But if you just wanted to play just the third one or just the first or just the second, it's still very easily digestible because a lot of that stuff in Dark Souls is kind of left up to somebody's own interpretation.
I see. I see. I might. Is that a PlayStation exclusive?
Um, the only PlayStation exclusive there, Demon Souls is PlayStation exclusive,
Oh, okay. So I can
and
play Dark Souls on like an Xbox or PC if I
right, so
wanted to.
you can play Dark Souls, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3 on the PC, and Sekiro if that's your sort of that's more of like a Japanese history sort of game.
Okay.
It's more grounded in real world history than the others. So Bloodborne is PS4 exclusive, and I think PlayStation 5 exclusive.
Okay.
The original Demon Souls is exclusive only to the PS3,
Whoa.
and then the Demon Souls remake is PS5 exclusive.
Okay. I think I will be getting a PS5. I'm definitely getting the Series X. But I think I will be getting a PS5. I just fucking got a Switch so I could play Animal Crossing with my
Right.
girlfriend. So I
I
figured
bought a computer a couple like just last month. So I've just been using that for everything.
it's not in my like probably budget anytime in the future, but I would like to get into PC at some point. I'm working on a Mac right now, which you
All right.
can play Steam, but whatever. So backtracking a bit, I was dumb and I was expecting to get the link in the Zoom chat, but oh no, fuck, my phone just died as I was pulling it up. But it is on Amazon.
Right.
What is it called again?
Um, you'll have to dig, but let me see if I can throw it into the Zoom
I've
chat.
yeah, that'd help. I've been there before. I have music on on fucking Amazon, and man, talk about the algorithm. Holy shit. If you're
Right.
like a small independent person putting anything out ever, you got to do a little bit of digging to find even your own stuff you know the name of and who did it
Right.
professionally. But you went through and got a true publishing deal?
Not exactly.
Okay.
So how it works is Amazon has their own. You can publish. I'm self-published, but it's published through Amazon,
Oh, okay.
where they will take a small cut plus the materials that it costs to make it. But I still get royalties.
I see. A lot of like businesses are doing it like that now. And like all over the industry, like merch. I mean, that's how my merch works. They make the shit, and they take a cut of everything that
Right.
But you can also do it DIY and do it the way you want to do it from ground up and make all the profits. My music goes through like a digital distributor, and apparently on Amazon, like I thought I signed up for like they'll make and distribute a CD of my music on demand, but I can't fucking find it anywhere. So I don't think you can buy a CD of my shit, but I think it's possible for that to
Right.
happen.
And that's how these are, where it's not, they didn't publish a bunch of copies to be bought. You place the order, then they bind it, and then they send it, or you buy it on the Kindle, and then you just get the downloaded version.
That's really cool though. But let's pull this up. We got the first book of, now let me see if I'm pronouncing this right. Moral.
Yep.
The Corinthian Saga book 1. So, do you think you have more in the pipeline?
Yeah, I am. Of course, they've been in the works, quote unquote, for God knows how long, but there's nothing. This is the only published work that I have.
Sure. I can relate to that. I've got a bunch of projects I've started on that hasn't yet seen the light of day. It's an interesting process. Do you mind if I click this look inside button and give a quick skim? Cool. Is Amazon? Oh no, they do have a true sample of it.
Right. I think it's the first
10, 12 pages.
Right.
Cool. All right. And let's read this description real quick. The collapse of the last bastion of defense between Morale and a hostile country puts the lives of the royal children in danger. However, when 4 agents in service to King Royce embark on the nobles, a massive conspiracy is discovered, one that threatens the world. With the aid of powerful allies, men belonging to myth, and a rightful king unseated long ago, it is up to these agents to save what they love most. Join a large ensemble of knights, warriors, and legendary figures, and a journey with them through dangers untold. Fuck. Hey, good ratings, 4.6 out of 5.
Right.
Looking like a... Well, this is kind of fucking cool. I might have... What do you think the read time or pages on? Oh, 184. It says it right here.
Yeah, so the first, I had a first edition that was misprinted because it was printed through, so Jackson Heights has their own printing press in the basement.
Sure.
And it was misprinted, but that was about 250 pages. So the reason this is so downsized is to cut on costs. They've shrunk the font down quite a bit for the paperback version.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so they've shrunk it down quite a bit. See how it's down now to 123.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So it's very small and it's very condensed just to save cost of material.
But I mean, fuck, yeah, 123 pages. Even if it is small font, that is a very digestible book. I mean, even 250. You said 250 was what it was originally?
Right, and that was with a larger font.
Yeah, that's... I would say definitely to anyone who's listening, go, especially if you're into this kind of style of I always get fiction and nonfiction confused. Nonfiction of this kind of writing, definitely go check this out. I might give it I'll I'll fuck around and I might pick it up. See how far through I get through it.
Right.
Do you have a tease or anything along the lines of, do you think anything else is coming up? Well, fuck. I mean, that only came out almost 3 years ago. How long does it take for you to write a book? How long does it take people to write a book? Because I feel like that
Well,
would take me ages.
it depends. That one from start to finish took me about a year, but that was I started it and then ended it, and it took about a year. But that it wasn't like a constant year of work, right?
Sure.
Because this was when I was in school, so I had a lot of free time to just sit down and write.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it can take, of course, it's been some years and I haven't published anything else, but I've got, in terms of any sort of teasers, there's a sequel being worked on, as well as a like a side story that takes place somewhere else.
Ooh, same universe type shit.
Yeah, it's the same universe that will tie into the sequel,
Ooh,
and
that's kind of
then
fucking cool.
and then of course the mythos I'm working on, creation of the world, start to finish, the entire legendarium, is something else that I've got working on.
Holy shit, that sounds intense. That sounds really interesting, actually.
Right. So I guess I can get into a little bit of that.
Yeah, if you feel comfortable with it, go for
Yeah.
it. I don't
So
want
like
you to talk about anything you
so
don't want to,
everything,
but go ahead.
was a void, right?
Uh-huh.
And so when I'll save some details for the actual reading of the book, but
Yeah.
when the world was created, they basically had to push that parts of the void away.
Mm-hmm.
And what these I'll call them makers, I guess, is has to be vague. Um, what they did with that void was they put it away. This was before a basic understanding of good and evil, where stuff was just kind of is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not that they're good or they're evil, it's that it's just kind of beyond them at this point in time. That may change later. But anyway, so everything that they they discarded basically forms into a being that is, by definition, pure evil.
Fuck.
So the void that was discarded turns into pure evil, and that's where the idea of evil manifests itself, is in that being who, from its conception, works against the creators. That's where the concept of good and evil comes from, where these creators are here to foster men and the children of men.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the idea, the pure evil that works against them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who was discarded and who is basically not by its own fault evil, because it was everything, negative and dark that was cast aside and formed on its own, but is still evil.
Right. That's fucking, like, that's heavy.
And then there's other stuff like the sun was created, um, and then the moon started out as not really a man but a being that
Sure.
went to go explore the rest of the void, who was captured and then corrupted for a time, where that pure evil wanted him to destroy the sun.
Whoa.
So he hits the sun, with his spear or whatever. He rides a flying chariot and he hits the sun, right? And that's what starts the rotation of the sun. But then he's
Shit.
taken back in by what is considered good, and he's kind of reconciled of the sins he's committed, but he still has to answer for them. So that's where the sun and moon cycle comes in, where he is now doomed to constantly chase the sun, but he can draw next to it, but he can never touch it again. So like eclipses and whatnot.
So, whereas your other book and series seems more Tolkien based, this almost seems, what comes to mind to me is like Greek mythology, or perhaps even like Old Testament.
Right.
Sort of like,
This is very old mythological religion inspired sort of work.
That is
because that's how
very
most of that
interesting.
is how that creationism is, right?
Yeah.
So the figure of light is, and then the silver chariot that will now chase it for eternity, and now
Mhm.
that is day and night.
That fuck. That is interesting when people can just like make up their own scenarios of like how this thing we take for granted on a day by day
Right.
like basis.
Um, one more thing I can get into if you don't mind before we wrap up.
Absolutely, go for it.
Um, so evil, I think I'll just call him. He has a name, but I think I'll just call him evil.
Okay.
Creates what is essentially a gigantic wolf that he which is on its way destroying whatever works.
Hmm.
And so what I will call good creates a giant basically
Oh shit.
with the spear that they took from what's called now the moon, right? So that spear has been given because that spear is made of pure light, basically pure moonlight, silver light, which is supposed to be pure. And so
So my
the
man Purity's out on a hunt to fucking spear a wolf.
right, and so he finds the wolf on the earth, and they fight, and he stabs the wolf through the heart,
Okay.
and the head of the spear breaks off inside of the wolf,
Oh.
and the giant's bitten by the wolf. So there's a thing about corruption, but in a second, so that spear, the wolf will decompose over time, right?
Okay.
But
Yeah.
all the nutrients from the body, right, and stuff that forms on that, it turns into an island basically.
Oh
Still
shit.
in the general shape of like a spike, but it's still an island, and people will move there eventually.
Uh
But
huh.
so people that live on that island, they like the armor that they wear and their swords are made of this incredibly strong material that they just thought we're blessed with. But what they don't know is that they're mining what's basically, I don't know, maybe I'll call it silverstone or some weird shit like that. But um, that's what they're using. But they where that comes from is the fact that it was used to kill the great wolf and it broke off. You know,
Oh, okay. I was gonna be like, are they mining the evil back up, or are they mining the good of getting rid of that evil?
right? So so when the wolf died and the spear broke off, the good and evil stuff kind of went away,
Dispersed. Okay.
right? So there are parts where it's like somebody who lives there too long, may feel a pull of corruption or whatever from just what lingers, thousands of years later. But the material that they're mining is actually the material of the spear. They don't realize that it's the
Fuck.
spear. And
I
so
Go ahead.
the giant who gets bit over time gets kind of corrupted. And so as a reward, they give him this island far off away from everything. But he's not satisfied, so he kind of goes on a little bit of a rampage, breaking stuff, right?
Hmm.
Forming valleys and mountains. And so they catch him and they're like, it's like, hey, what's going on? And so they do the same thing they do with the moon, except in the main center continent, which is Moral, that's the center continent,
Hmm.
basically. Um,
Oh, okay. So this is still is this the side story in the same universe? Is this
yeah,
what?
this is in the same universe. This
Okay.
is like
Okay.
this is the Legendarium thing. At the very far north, the top of the mountains, there are clouds that it's a constant rain basically.
Okay.
And so he's charged with making a river. So they give him this big bucket and he fills it up with the rainwater and he throws that water down the mountain. And so it makes
Hmm.
this river that kind of bisects the entire continent. And so, of course, it's a big bucket. It takes a while to fill. So
Uh-huh.
people will remark that it's strange that sometimes the river runs much faster than, than it's sometimes because if it runs faster, that means he's filled the bucket up and now he's throwing it back down the mountains through the river, through whatever channel's already been formed. And
Yeah,
so when
yeah,
it
and
flows
changes the
slower,
current.
right? And so they've got, their own flow for when to cross the river and when to not, every like I don't know, once a week, maybe it'll flow fast because it takes a week for the bucket to fill or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that the giant tried to make were exiled to the island. He tried to make his own little army. And so now there's like a kind of an island of almost legend where there's some these weird stunted half giant things.
and okay, very interesting. That's a level of creativity and storytelling that I mean, I'm sure I could get there, but it's like, holy shit. I almost don't have the time to be alone with my thoughts enough to try to piece something like that together. Because
The
that
hard
is
part is trying to not contradict yourself.
fuck, yeah.
You might write something that says like, and then giant was tasked to do this for 5,000 years or whatever, and then you might forget about that, and then
3,000 years later or whatever.
right, 3/4 of a year, 3/4 of the way through the story, you might mention that the giant was cursed to do this for eternity, and so it's trying to keep mental notes on stuff like that, so you don't contradict yourself, especially in like the span of thousands and thousands of years.
Do you feel obligated then to go through and fully like proofread and make notes of like all the branching timelines and stuff like that as you go?
So for when I write the sequel, on the rare times I do write, I just have the first edition, the book one, I'll have it pulled up for reference.
Okay.
So I won't go through and memorize everything because I have forgotten some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I will go back, and if I need to find a specific point, to reference some prior event, I will just have the other one pulled up and find that spot in the story.
That's probably a smarter way of
continuity.
going about that. Yeah, yeah. Fuck continuity. I hear about that on film sets all the time. But that's again, another thing I never have to like really think or worry about, but seeing someone else or hearing someone else have to go through it and really like keep the fucking story straight. Oh, that would be a huge headache to me. But like,
it's easier with practice. It's just the first few months are very frustrating.
Oh, I'm sure.
To write something that you think is very profound, and then all of a sudden you turn around and you go, "What's complete fucking opposite of what I said 20 pages ago?" So you have to turn around and you have to reinvent a way to get a point, because you still want to say this thing because it's profound and it's very insightful, but it's wrong in terms of how it fits with the story. So you have to try and kind of finagle it in there without compromising your continuity and the integrity of your story.
And again, it's one of those things of like, I mean, if you're passionate about what you're writing, you're gonna go through and do those things and
right.
get done what needs to be done regardless. But from an outsider's perspective of someone who I don't think I have an interest in writing. I mean, lyrics and like to an extent like storytelling through lyrics, yeah, but I don't think I have the mental capacity to sit down and like write an entire book. It's just an impressive feat to do. Thinking about that, like hearing that on paper and thinking about that, I was like, holy shit, what a fucking headache that would be. So, but that shouldn't be like a discouraging thing to someone who's writing a book either.
So for anybody who may be listening who does feel discouraged, my advice to you is, if a lot of good ideas come right before you go to bed because your mind starts to kind of wander on its own, I urge anybody who may be listening that realizes they have those ideas and then they're lost when they wake up to write it down. That's how I started. Was I had a notebook on my bedside table, and if I was closing my eyes and imagining like a movie in my head or whatever of, and something would happen that I would think is cool, this entire book that I've written was based off one line, which is the first line in the book, was based off that one line I wrote down before I went to bed. And then I woke up the next morning and looked at it and I thought I could probably do something with this. I don't know. And then it just went from there.
Hmm. No, that is something people overlook a lot because they're just like, oh fuck it, I'm tired, let me go to bed. But I like late at night, it probably is nicer to have like a notebook or something, but I'll have like a riff idea, or I'll wake
Right.
up in the middle of the night and I'll have like a riff idea, and I'll pick up my phone and I'll like sing it into my phone and record it and like
Right. Well, that
favorite it in my camera roll.
right that works too. It's just as long as you have it recorded somewhere other
Yes,
than your brain,
the
so
brain
you
is
have
such
it,
a futile thing.
so you have it just, it can be scribbled on whatever. You could write it on a napkin. As much as I don't like Harry Potter, it started by being written on a napkin in a restaurant.
Yeah, or
Um,
classic example, Eminem lyrics,
right.
fucking
Um,
in a McDonald's or whatever. Yeah.
so like you will surprise yourself because a lot of people will sell themselves short, but you will surprise yourself with what you can do if you just record what you think, before you wake up and you think, oh, I have nothing to write about. If you record what you think about before you go to bed or when you wake up or whenever during the day, and then you look at those things, it will form almost on its own unconsciously. That's how it was for me anyway.
Yeah, so many people have so much untapped potential, like creatively, but they just don't like organize it or put it like have it in a way that you can take these ideas, these creative ideas, and actually turn it into something in the future. There's no like, maybe there's the will and desire to do something with it, but there's no action taken or even thought sometimes to like have some sort of organization or record keeping or
Right.
something along those lines that makes those things more possible in the future.
Well, there's a difference also between being lazy and being unmotivated.
Yeah, there is. There is for
So,
sure.
um, for example, a few years ago, I dislocated my knee while I
Hmm.
was lifting weights.
Oh,
I am motivated to lift weights again, yet I have fallen out of routine and I am just lazy.
sure.
And there are people that have the capabilities that are not lazy, that will have the capabilities but are unmotivated in the work, so it does not, show, an end result.
Yeah, they might not be like a lazy person, but it's just like, what's working out going to benefit me right
Right.
now
And
and at
so
this point in my life?
you might work out, but if you go and you half-ass, you've got there, but the motivation and that doesn't just apply to weightlifting. This is
Everything.
something,
Yeah.
yeah, something you can apply to your entire life. Writing music, writing books,
Hmm.
um, or whatever art, you know, because you
Yeah.
might be able to get up and you might be able to draw something, but you need to be motivated to make something better than what you made the day before, sort of. Because falling
Right.
into a rut can be very dangerous with any
Oh,
sort of job or hobby or interest. Because
even
if you
like
fall
management stuff.
right, if you fall into a rut, you will at some point lose interest because it will become just another thing, and then
Ooh, that's something that's almost never talked about because some people are just like, it's all right, you'll get over it, out of it. But like, if you don't like work towards getting out of it, you're just not gonna give a shit about it
right.
anymore because you're just gonna put it on the back burner and it's gonna burn to a fucking crisp.
That's what happened to me. I got in a rut with writing, and then it became just another thing, and then I threw it out with some other stuff in my brain, and it took me about 6 months before I ever touched a keyboard again, just because I just lost that motivation because you have to treat it like it's special. You
This
cannot
might, yeah,
treat
for
it.
sure. Finish what you wanted to say.
That was just you have to treat it like it's special. You can't just treat it like it's, any other thing. Like, not that, oh, I just get home from work and then I write a little bit and then I go to bed. You get home from work and then I write a little bit. I create, even if it makes it sound stupid in your head or whatever, you have to make it sound special to yourself so it doesn't just become another thing to do, another chore to get out of the way, basically.
It might be worthwhile, and I know this kind of it sounds a little lame, but I found it very helpful in my own career. It might be worthwhile to go to like they might have something like this in Topeka, probably Kansas City, maybe Topeka. But like writing conferences and like writing networking, like meetings and stuff like that. And that's going to be a hard balance to find of like being able to go to those kinds of things and not turn it into work, like maintain being an author as like this fun hobby thing you do. But I really have found personally, like when I was in high school, I kind of like I had already been so inside of music for so long, but there was no like opportunity. There was no person I could talk to at length about music and the kind of stuff I wanted to do. But I came out here and I surrounded myself with other musicians, business professionals, uh, audio engineers, and stuff like that. And when you're around those people who constantly have those kinds of ideas and these cool stories and these cool like projects that they're working on, if you can converse with them and socialize with them, um, it motivates you to work on your own shit more. It really does. At least me, it does. So I'm sure, like, no matter what you're on, if you're an author, find other authors to talk to or go to conferences or social, like networking events, stuff like that. If you're an actor, do the same thing with acting. If you're a fucking maintenance guy and you want your maintenance company to be better, go to like maintenance conferences or whatever. It's really good at idea generation and motivation. I feel like for sure. Those things might be harder to find in your area, but I'm sure they exist if you would like do a little bit of research and if you were dedicated to that kind of idea. It's maybe not something you want to
for about everything.
What's that?
They make conferences for just about everything.
Absolutely. But yeah, that might not be something. It doesn't sound fun on paper, but it is. I've found it actually a really important part of my life and career is to just show up to like these networking things. It's really beneficial, I find. But it sounds boring as fuck on paper, though. I don't know. So yeah, if that doesn't immediately pull you as to something you want to do, I don't blame you. But keep it in mind. Keep it like in thought. If you ever do find yourself like burnt out, maybe just hang out with some other writers. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, those who are listening, thank you for tuning into this podcast. I think it's time to wrap up. This might be the longest one yet, which, by the way, props to you for being able to hold conversation that long. I get guests on here sometimes, and it's like they burn out after 45 minutes. And if they burn out, I burn out too. Like,
I'm able to ramble forever.
Oh, and it's been great. This has been a very interesting podcast for sure.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the wide range of topics from nuclear warfare to religion to staying motivated.
Yeah, this has been like, I don't want to say serious, but kind of a very serious, in-depth, like dive in kind of conversation, like podcast and conversation, which sometimes we just get like, Bo just like spits on camera sometimes, and that's his gag. Like
it is brain picking and rambling at its finest.
Absolutely,
and it's its own form of art.
It really is. This is like kind of its own art form, and there's an amount of time and dedication you need to like put into it. That you can make it better, like anything else. Whatever. Now I'm rambling in the closure. But yes, this has been a great podcast. Thank you, audience, for those who tuned in. Thank you, Ed, for being here. What do you want to plug? Absolutely, let's plug this. Your book here. Let's see here. I'll bring it back up. We have the first book of Morale, the Corinthian Saga book, the first one in the series. Go pick it up. It's on Amazon. If you got Kindle, $3 Kindle, $10 paperback. That's nothing. You can afford a book and not a long read. Give it a shot. Check it out for sure.
In terms of plug, if you just wouldn't mind throwing the link in the description, it is very hard to find.
Absolutely. The link will be in the description. Do you want your socials plugged or anything?
I keep my brand stuff separate from personal.
Sure. Okay. Okay. So just the Amazon plug.
Right, just the Amazon plug.
Perfect. Perfect. That will be in the description for sure.
Actually, now that I think about it, that podcast that you would listen to,
Yes.
the Dark Souls stuff, that channel, I'm sure he would appreciate it.
Fuck, I can bring that up right now and also slap that in the description, but let's share it here. What's the channel name?
It's totally legit. And Estoc, ESTOC, ESTOC,
Gotcha.
no K.
Oh, so sorry. Whoops.
And then Hitbox. Oh, there it
Hitbox
is,
right here.
Yeah.
Cool, perfect. And there was, yeah, you were on the episode 5, the God Run. Is
Right.
that
I'm
one
on episode 2 and episode 5, but there's plenty of other stuff to get into and listen to.
Absolutely. And this was, as someone who wasn't really into Dark Souls much, it just seemed so overwhelming. This podcast and this interview that you guys did was actually like thoroughly interesting to like get into the way he approached like the game and the games and his thoughts
Right.
on that stuff.
And so Nico will have his stuff, I'm sure, plugged in this description of that episode 5. But he's got a Twitch and he's got a YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. Go check out this channel and run through and get this little community some likes, some views. Check it out, audience, for sure. So yeah, the book, that channel, perfect. Audience, if you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., there's a link to the YouTube version in the description. If you're watching this on YouTube, a link to Spotify, Apple, all the podcast platforms is also in the description. If you're watching this on, so sorry, fucking up my own outro. Links to, and I'm saying all of our individual, but that would be Joel, Bo, and I's. The 3 of our Instagrams, Twitters, Facebook, TikToks, links to all of that is also in the description. If you would like to buy me a coffee, links to that is also in the description. We have merch and a website at blackmetalprod.com. That's BLACKMETALPROD.com. And /shop if you want to go straight to the merch. Yeah, some pretty cool shit. There's some Ketchup podcast. There's like a shirt and a hat that you can pick up over there. But there's also stuff from my other projects. Some solo stuff. There's some general Black Metal Productions merch. Go check it out. Link in the description. Over at Black Metal Prod, we are also offering production services, like music production services. We could also maybe fuck around and do like podcast mastering and mixing. Any audio related thing. If you want to inquire, it's blackmetalprod.com/services, I believe. There's a little fill out form and we can do work for you. Other than that, please subscribe, rate 5 stars, and have a good rest of your day, ladies and gentlemen. Say bye with me, Ed. Bye.
Goodbye.